10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Anthem on this Thursday, April the 21st, because
it is Her Majesty's 96th birthday. So if you're watching this morning, ma'am, happy birthday.
Good morning to you. This is Eamonn and Isabel. Breakfast here on GB News.
The Prime Minister arrives in India this morning as he attempts to deepen economic and defence ties with the country.
Well, this is Breakfast. Eamonn and Isabel here, and here's what's leading our programme this morning.
The Prime Minister's landed in India in the last hour or so for a two-day trip intended to strengthen trade ties with the country. He's hinted the UK could let in more skilled migrants from India in return for a post-Brexit trade deal.
And as we've just been saying, the Queen celebrates her birthday today at Sandringham, 96 years of age. Special pictures like this being released, and it's reported that she will be staying at a small and intimate cottage on the estate, said to have a strong association with Prince Philip.
Russia has test-launched a nuclear-capable missile, with Vladimir Putin boasting it will give his country's enemies food for thought. It comes as a Chechen warlord loyal to Putin claims that the Ukrainian city of Mariupol will fall by lunchtime.
And Julian Assange's American extradition order has been sent to the Home Secretary for a final sign-off. Priti Patel will now decide if the United States request meets legal criteria, including a promise not to kill the WikiLeaks founder.
And remember, we want to hear from you. As always, get involved by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
And tell us what up.
The Prime Minister's arrived in India for a trip aimed at strengthening economic and defence ties with the country.
The PM arrived there this morning for a 48-hour visit as part of his goal to secure a post-Brexit trade deal with the country. He's going to hold one-on-one meetings with the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, with new announcements on trade and security expected.
So the government's hinted that rules on skilled workers from India coming to the UK could be relaxed if it meant a deal could be struck by the end of the year.
Director of the think tank Orthodox Conservatives joins us now. It's Joseph Robertson. Joseph, good to see you. Busy times, lots to think about. And from the Orthodox Conservatives' point of view,
yes.
How do you think the Prime Minister has been performing this week?
Well, I think it's been a mixed bag to some degree. I think he's obviously facing broader issues at home with the Partygate scandal and everything like that, while having the bigger issues to deal with abroad, going across to India, and obviously dealing with the circumstances in Ukraine as well.
Does that help him or hinder him? The fact that he's seen on the world stage, the fact that he's seen, to use his words, as getting on with the job?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think from a PR perspective, keeping going is always good. And I think what he's doing right now is important work. So bringing the ties with India, a country steeped in history and a key member of our Commonwealth friends, that's going to take some of the stress off him at home, because it's just such an important mission, I guess.
An interesting mission, not just, I suppose, based on trade, and certainly he's been welcomed with open arms. I gather there's billboards all over Gujarat with his picture, larger than life, more billboards than we've got, Eamonn, even. And he's also there on an interesting mission in terms of Ukraine as well, because India not quite in step with the rest of the West in their response to Putin.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting case you've got with India, because obviously we know there's some arms deals going on that they want to see fulfilled from Russia. But as well as that, I think there's also an interesting thing to look at with cryptocurrency. China's been developing its own kind of crypto for a number of years to fill into its plethora of different digital tools that it uses. And I think India's probably moving more towards the Chinese model as far as digital currency goes. So that's something that I think maybe we need to look to draw them back from if we want to bring them back into the Commonwealth fold.
We see you've completely lost me as to what that all means. What difference does it make with what currency India trades with?
So when it comes to digital, if you go with the Chinese model, you're being drawn more into their sphere of influence. And that's something that Russia's sought to do recently, is to ally quite strongly in terms of how they're building their digital financial model.
Yes.
So
bottom line, Joseph, in this very, very important week, there's going to be this vote today whether the Prime Minister should be held to account as to whether he misled Parliament or not. Where do you, or where does Orthodox Conservatives stand as regard support for Boris Johnson?
Well, I think what he did was wrong, but I wouldn't go as far as to condemn him purely based on that. I think for us a key issue is more reconsidering the policy around lockdowns rather than worrying about who broke the rules during that period. We've seen research recently from the Johns Hopkins Institute that suggests that it only affected mortality positively by about 0.2%, the whole sort of lockdown policy, everything that's been going on. So for us, the key thing is to make sure that we're looking at the economic shock rather than worrying perhaps what the Prime Minister was doing at that time. How is he pulling us back when the taxpayer is being hit so hard at the moment? And is he going to rein in the green taxes that are affecting people?
Which you would like to see.
I would love to see that. I think that's one of the key areas we need to look at, how we're being affected.
You see, Joseph, you're absolutely right, and I think there is a big disconnect here, that a lot of the public, particularly with these local elections coming up, see a disconnect. They see a government who had a chance through the spring statement from the Chancellor to show they are in touch with people, that they feel people's pain, and they feel that maybe that opportunity went unheeded and has been missed.
I think so. I think the problem is that by constantly sort of rapping on the door of Partygate, we push the Prime Minister back into a hole and almost make it more of a personal matter rather than getting him to focus on the issues that are affecting us as taxpayers.
And I suppose the problem with this Partygate story is, unfortunately, the police investigation hasn't wrapped up yet, and we haven't had the full Sue Gray inquiry, which means it just goes on and on and on. We're all sick to death of talking about it. This motion that's been tabled by the Conservatives is to try and delay this vote on whether or not Boris Johnson should face this inquiry. Labour, of course, saying, well, this is just a delay tactic, they're trying to block it. But it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because why not wait until all of this is wrapped up before we talk about it some more? We don't know what's happening next week, let alone the week after.
Well, I think one thing we do know that's coming up is of course, local elections. And I think from all party perspectives, it's best to focus on that, get that out of the way, and then move on to the future of the PM.
Certainly the Conservatives would argue that.
Certainly the Conservatives would argue that, but I think other parties have their own campaigns in full flow. Why sort of sideline that, push the focus back onto the PM? If he does a good job, that might sideline their efforts as well.
Can you see a no-confidence vote coming?
Not immediately, no. And again, I think it's because we've got too many issues crammed into one. I think it was interesting that Craig Whitaker, who has been quite outspoken in sort of asking the PM to step down, didn't actually submit a letter into the 1922 Commission. And I think that's broadly kind of the feeling within Tory MPs. It's like, yes, the Prime Minister did wrong, and we'll say that publicly, but we don't want to shift the party too far.
Yet. So could I ask you, you don't have to answer me, but where would you stand on this? You say you don't want to push the party too far yet. Should the Prime Minister eventually be pushed?
Well, for me, I want to see a gold standard Conservative back in number 10, somebody who really cares about what the membership wants, somebody who's not detached from the real issues we're looking at. So, of course, I think PM has a lot of work to do there.
Who springs to mind when you describe
Who springs to mind? Sir John Redwood, Suella Braverman, someone like that who's really got the confidence of the membership and also has a lot of vision for the future rather than keeping on with the same kind of Cameron-esque policy that's been to the left of Blair largely for most of this premiership.
So when you talk about what the membership wants, and you say they don't want that Cameron model there, what do they want? What is important to your orthodox Conservatives?
Well, I think someone who focuses on the traditional values of the Conservative Party, which is looking at how families are affected, creating new jobs, looking at not overtaxing, trying to reduce spending rather than this enormous push we've seen, even post-COVID, continuous borrowing. We need to cut down on taxes. We need to see...
Are you aware, Joseph, of retrospective taxes?
Absolutely,
introduced by George Osborne. Do you have a view on retrospective taxes?
I think that what we need... Well, we're in a crisis at the moment. So the problem is that we need to find a way out by creating more jobs and more economy rather than looking at taxes. So I think for me it's about reviving the economy rather than stifling the taxpayer further. So I would say to steer completely clear as much as possible of continuing to tax.
Penalising people.
Penalising people is something they're not involved in.
Does fracking come into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to be looking, especially with the crisis ongoing in Russia, where's our oil going to be coming from?
And Rwanda, where does the Orthodox wing of the party stand on?
So I think it is a step in the right direction. So I think we do need to do something to curtail the flow of migrants across the Channel, and there needs to be a humanitarian response to that as well.
So was the Archbishop of Canterbury wrong?
Totally wrong, because he's not considering his own people here at home. And I think that's always the dual aspects of a humanitarian crisis. There's a reason why we also need to stop having loads of people coming into the country. It's not because we're racist, it's not because we're not welcoming. It's because we have to put our own people first. And I think the Rwanda policy is a step in the right direction, but it certainly needs a lot of work.
Very interesting talking to you, Joseph Robertson. Come back and speak to us again. Very nice to hear how the Conservative voters are thinking on this. Joseph is the Director of Orthodox Conservatives. Lovely to talk to you.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Now, the Queen is spending her 96th birthday at Sandringham today. Happy birthday to Her Majesty. And that is, of course, where her husband, Prince Philip, spent much of his retirement and was believed to be his happiest there.
Well, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery and the Honourable Artillery Company will fire gun salutes at midday today at Hyde Park in honour of the occasion. Our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has been looking back at Her Majesty's legacy.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
Her Majesty the Queen, speaking in 2015 when she overtook her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria as Britain's longest reigning monarch. This year, we celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne. Trooping the colour is a large part of June's celebrations and has marked the official birthday of the British sovereign for more than 2 centuries. But today, we celebrate the Queen's actual birthday. 96 years ago, the then Princess Elizabeth was born, not in a palace, but in a townhouse. She wasn't expected to be Queen, but her uncle, King Edward VIII's sudden abdication to marry an American divorcee propelled Elizabeth up the line of succession.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service
Even on her birthday, Her Majesty continues with duties and works through her daily red box of government papers. 14 British Prime Ministers have served her, as well as 15 Australian and 12 Canadians. She has advised and guided each of them through troubled times, while always knowing when to lighten the mood.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
This week, it reveals the Queen's corgis were an absolute joy for her during the coronavirus pandemic. Her Majesty's personal advisor, Angela Kelly, reveals in a new chapter of her book that the Queen often took her dogs on long walks and were a great comfort when her late husband, Prince Philip, was in hospital. Her Majesty's 2 corgi puppies, Mick and Sandy, were a present from the Queen's son, Prince Andrew, and his daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. It's unknown what birthday presents are on offer this year, but Her Majesty is expected to mark the day privately.
Well, as a nation, we're marking the day with this newly released picture of Her Majesty, which I think we can bring you in all its beautiful Technicolor glory. For listening on the radio, it is Her Majesty flanked by 2 of her favourite fell ponies, taken in the blooming gardens in front of a beautiful magnolia on the Windsor
you mean actually
estate.
blossom blooming? I thought you were just being expletive
rude.
there.
No,
because you never know what pops out of your mouth. So
Let's not digress.
She's in the blooming gardens there.
What do we think of this picture, Eamonn? Are you a fan? Do you like it?
I think everybody looks lovely. I think you just want to brush the horse's hair.
They look very
lovely and
fluffy, don't they?
And their hair matches Her Majesty's hair there in the middle, which looks very nicely coiffured.
Yeah, and look, far be it from me to criticise Her Majesty, the beloved Queen, and I happy birthday to her. I'm not sure it's my favourite picture of her. I think the 2 ponies, it just makes it look a bit odd. If it had been 1... Anyway, there's always something to say, isn't there? But no, it's a lovely photo. But again, when she normally wears the green cape, and if we can pop that picture up again, seeing as we're discussing it, and again on the radio, she's wearing a green sort of outdoor, what would you call it? Just a cape. She would normally be wearing her sort of headscarf with it, and it's sort of neither one thing nor the other without the headscarf. So anyway.
But you do like your fashion.
I do like my fashion.
I think, but her hair looks very well. Looks very good.
Well.
And Her Majesty shares her birthday today with somebody called Jamie Lomas. Oh, he's in Hollyoaks, isn't he? Yeah. The actress Andie MacDowell.
From For Weddings and a Funeral.
That's right. The rocker Iggy Pop, who's 75, and the Cure frontman Robert Smith, who's 63.
What a day the 21st of April is. But at the grand old age of 96.
If it's your birthday, share it with us today.
Yeah, we'll give you a birthday
Tweet
shout
us at
out.
GB News. We'll do it. Consider it like a request show. Like you can phone in the radio and say, "Dear Eamonn and Isabel, it's my birthday today, and can you give us a mention?" We'll do our best. Yeah. Right, with the time at 6:15, let's bring you up to date with the news.
The Prime Minister has hinted that he thinks negotiations with Russia to stop the war in Ukraine are doomed to fail. Whilst flying to India, Boris Johnson said trying to deal with President Putin is like having a crocodile having your leg in its jaws.
The government will attempt to delay a vote on an inquiry into whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament over Downing Street parties in lockdown. Boris Johnson is away on an official trip to India whilst the vote takes place in the Commons later today.
As we've just been discussing, to celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday today, a new photograph's been released. It was taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle, and Her Majesty's pictured there with 2 of her white fell ponies. Her Majesty is at Sandringham today, staying at her house much beloved by her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh Wood Farm.
Now, a British court yesterday approved the extradition of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to America, where he's wanted for his involvement in the leaking of classified documents some 10 years ago.
Yeah, the decision to extradite will ultimately fall now to the Home Secretary, who will have the final say. The WikiLeaks founder is expected to appeal to the High Court if Priti Patel approves the extradition. So we can now go live to our GB News reporter Rosie Wright, who's outside the prison that Assange is currently being held in. Good morning to you, Rosie. And Assange appearing via video link from there yesterday during this brief hearing. a very brief hearing, just 7 minutes. His barrister actually described it as a brief but significant moment. It was formal approval by the Westminster Magistrates Court yesterday for the extradition of the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. This is something that he and his legal team have been fighting and battling for years. We've seen some extraordinary strategies to try and get round it. Now he's here at Belmarsh Prison and will continue to do just that. Yesterday was really only a sort of rubber stamping exercise. His team lost a case in the Supreme Court earlier this year in February. So today his barrister said, look, I'm duty bound to do this. It will be really brief. As you mentioned, Isabel, Julian Assange only appearing via video link for the formality, really. But as you hinted at, this very much is one step closer to extraditing Julian Assange, but there is a long way to go yet. OK, Rosie, thank you very much. We'll be back with you a little bit later on in the programme, and we can bring in a human rights lawyer now, Harjap Singh Bangal, who joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you. Thanks for coming in bright and early to talk about this. Look, it feels like this subject and this mission from the Americans to get Julian Assange back on their territory has been going on for a very long time. Are we one step closer to that happening, do you think?
I think we are, but I think there's a lot of steps to go yet. The ball now is firmly in Priti Patel's court. It's down to her to say and literally do a tick box exercise, say whether Julian Assange should be extradited. After that, he'll get an appeal. Back to the courts we go again, and once again a lengthy process. So although we're one step closer, don't expect to see Julian Assange on a plane just yet.
Harjap, why is this so important? Whether people are aware of what Assange is accused of or not, or are interested or even care, there's repercussions to this if this goes ahead.
Yeah, I mean, especially Assange has a lot of supporters and a lot of journalists, regardless of whether their political stances, alongside him. What essentially he's accused of is spying. However, the documents that he leaked, unveiled atrocities that were carried out during wars. So are we sort of silencing the truth now? Essentially, his defence is, well, what I've said, what was leaked was the truth, and that the government shouldn't try to cover this up. And the US government is saying, well, it was sensitive material, it had military plans in it, and, it's against the law. So if someone can now be extradited and sent to prison for telling the truth, what does that say about freedom of speech, essentially? So that is at the core of this case, that for exposing the government's lies and cover-ups and crimes, does the person who's exposed it warrant going to jail?
Yeah, and this, I suppose, is the huge headache and debate, and the reason there's been so much political and legal wrangling, because you have this tension, don't you, between freedom of speech and actually the fact that he did undeniably undermine national security and the lives of officers and soldiers fighting in theatres of war.
Yeah, essentially, that's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is, well, everyone should have been going by the book anyway. War is not an excuse for the person who's claiming to free somebody to then inflict crimes upon, the others or innocents. So it's very tense. We see the situation now in Ukraine and Russia, and no doubt after the situation finishes or it comes to some sort of close, then there'll be stories coming out about atrocities committed there as well. War does bring this with it.
Harjap, we believe one of the conditions in front of the Home Secretary is that if she grants this extradition, that the US cannot, inverted commas, kill Julian Assange.
Yeah, that essentially is correct. That's one of the things she'll have to consider. The US have already given a guarantee saying, look, we won't kill him. And even if they do pass the death sentence, then they can't carry it out. That's one of the conditions. If at any stage the US refuse to do that and say, well, actually, there's no guarantees, we might give them the death penalty and we might carry that out, then Priti Patel is well within her rights to say, I refuse to make this extradition order. However, if the US government say, well, actually, no, we're not going to kill him, we're going to give him 175 years in jail.
Yeah.
And, this guy's never going to see daylight again. Yeah. And he's never going to have a normal life. And for the past few years, he hasn't had a normal life. He's just been holed up in places.
But where do you come in, or people like you, in terms of his human rights? His story has been prolonged. It's gone on. There's been a movie made about him and his life and what he's been accused of and whatever as well. Tell us about his human rights.
His human rights, he has a right to not to be tortured, he has a right not to be persecuted on the basis of his race, religion, nationality, or ethnic group. He has a right to have a family life. All of these can be argued. However, what warrants it, what actually governs this, is a treaty signed by the US and the UK, the extradition treaty, which a lot of people, including journalists, politicians, lawyers, have argued is very balanced towards the US and is not favoured towards the UK at all. It's much harder for the UK to get somebody from the US over, as we've seen with Anne Secoulis, and as opposed to the US getting somebody over from the UK. So the counter-argument is, well, the treaty should be fair. If America want Assange, then surely why isn't it that easy for us to have Anne Secoulis over, who, you know, the family are still waiting for justice? Human rights should apply to all, surely, and not selectively.
Yeah,
right?
so those people who aren't aware, Anne Secoulis, of course, accused of killing Harry Dunn.
That's right,
And she was linked to the CIA and has managed to claim immunity, diplomatic immunity in the States.
Hajab, we've got to leave it there. Lovely talking to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
This story's going to develop throughout the day. As Hajab Singh Bangal, who's a human rights lawyer, was saying there, this decision, this document is on the desk of the Home Secretary, and we will hear from her today as to what she decides. OK, we're asking now, should politicians stand down if they don't attend Parliament? We'll be talking about that after this short break. Here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Luke Mile with your weather forecasts, and this Thursday morning is going to be a bit of a chilly one out there first thing. Temperatures have fallen away overnight, but through the day we'll see plenty of warm sunshine away from those eastern coasts. Now, we will start to see an easterly wind feeding in over the next few days with the high pressure to the north and lower pressure down towards the southwest. It does mean that things will turn a bit cooler along those eastern coasts, and already we're starting to see that through this morning with this low cloud here drifting onto the coasts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. But by and large, most places will see a fine and fair day, lots of sunshine around across the UK. A little bit more cloud developing though for England and Wales through the afternoon, turning that sunshine a little bit hazier through the afternoon. But where we do see the sunshine, those temperatures getting up to 18 degrees, that's 64 in Fahrenheit. Now, through Thursday afternoon and evening, we'll see plenty of sunshine to end the day. A lot of this cloud will melt away, so for many, a fair end to the day. But overnight, we start to see that easterly wind turning a bit stronger, drifting in this low cloud and mist and haar, so it will turn a bit grey and a bit murky, I think, for some places, particularly in the east as we go to the small hours of Friday. Some clear skies, though, but with more wind and a bit more cloud in general, temperatures won't be as low as what they were on Thursday morning. And that cloud could be thick enough at times through Friday morning to give a few spits and spots of rain across southern areas. Nothing particularly heavy, but at times there will be a little bit more cloud and rain here. But the best of sunshine will be further north, particularly northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northwest England. We'll see some fair weather here through the day. Temperatures still not doing too bad where we've got the sunshine, but with the cloud and with the cooler wind, it will feel quite chilly along those North Sea coasts and under any of this thicker cloud. And that's the trend really as we go through the next few days. Those temperatures sliding down somewhat, and there will be a few showers at times, particularly for more southern areas. Of course, I'll be back later with an update for you. Take care.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Still to come on the programme this morning, as the world's oldest death row inmate is to be executed in Texas today, we're going to be talking to a man who was wrongly convicted and then spent 18 years inside prison. And he says, the man who's to be executed today, that his death penalty, his death sentence should be abolished. So your view on that one, 6:45, we're talking about that one, so in 20 minutes, 50 minutes time. And also this man, the mass man concerned, is 81 years of age, though personally, I don't think your age has anything to do with it. I think, he was head of the SS, but he was 81 years of age and he's an old man, don't care.
He shot a police officer, this guy, didn't he, in the head, and there's no question, there's no wrongful conviction in this particular case. This guy was a murderer. That's the law in the States. Let us know your views. Okay. Also this morning, we're going to be speaking to the Shadow Health Minister, Wes Streeting, that's a little bit later on, about why his party is pushing for that inquiry into the Prime Minister, whether or not he misled Parliament. That's in around an hour's time. OK, your views, you can tweet us at GB News. Right, the time just creeping up to 6:30, and a Conservative MSP in Scotland is finalising a draft bill which will aim to bring politicians who don't attend Holyrood for 6 months being forced to stand down. It comes after the disgraced SNP Cabinet Secretary, Derek Mackay, pocketed around $157,000 from the taxpayer before finally stepping down at the May 2021 elections. Graham Simpson, Tory MSP for Central Scotland, is behind the bill. He spoke to our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, about this one.
MSP doesn't turn up for work for 6 months or more without a good excuse, like, for instance, they've been ill, then they'd be removed from office. The same rule applies to councillors across the UK, but there's nothing similar for MSPs. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that I think if an MSP is convicted of an offence and is jailed for any period, then they should be removed. Currently, the law says that you would be removed if you were jailed for more than a year. So I'm saying that at any period, then you should lose your seat. And then the third aspect is that I want to see if we can introduce a recall system into the Scottish Parliament, similar to the one that they have in Westminster and other countries.
I mean, that's pretty far-ranging, really, isn't it? I mean, what sort of grounds for this do you have? Why has this come about?
Well, it came about really because the finance minister in Scotland, Derek Mackay, he resigned as finance minister, but he carried on as an MSP for another 15 months and never set foot in Parliament again, never took part in any votes, despite being able to, because we've had the pandemic, we had hybrid voting. He could have voted from home, but he didn't. So it struck me that that was completely wrong. And I knew that, having been a councillor myself, that this rule applied to councillors, so why not MSPs? And actually, if you think about it, you could do any job, and if you just stopped doing it, you wouldn't surely expect to be paid.
And in terms of the other parties, are they against this? Are they supporting it? Or
the ones that I've not heard from so far are the SNP, but of course they're the government, and they will have an opportunity if I pursue this, which I will, they'll have an opportunity to take the bill off me. So it could become a government bill. So I'm not surprised I've not heard from them yet. But other parties, Labour, are on board with it. I think the Lib Dems are on board with it. And actually, when you think about it, why wouldn't you be? Apart from when you get into the detail of the thing.
I think there's merits in the bill, and we'll look at the bill when the bill is published. I think it's right that MSPs are elected to serve their constituents and serve the people, and if they're not uptaking that duty, then I think there are serious questions to be asked. And I think that's partly around non-attendance, it's partly around those that perhaps may get convictions or are caught in difficult situations. That Parliament is about the people, it's not about politicians, and I think the quicker we recognise that, the better.
At 8:45 today, we just want to bring you details of a very, very important interview, an interview that will have grabbed many of your hearts, and I know it affected you, Isabel. It's quite personal.
Yeah, so we'll be speaking to a mother, a Ukrainian mother, who scrawled the name of her toddler onto the back of her 2-year-old. It was a picture that made the front of many of the UK newspapers, the little 2-year-old in a nappy. Mother was so afraid that she and her partner might die, and the child may not know who she was or where she was from during the conflict. She is now safe, and she's going to be talking to us at 8:45.
Next, we'll bring you through the newspapers. This morning it's going to be David Wooding and Liz Kershaw. We'll see you right after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It is already 6:36. The time is whizzing past this morning. Let's bring you up to date on those headlines. This morning, the Prime Minister has hinted that he thinks negotiations with Russia to stop the war in Ukraine are doomed to fail. Boris Johnson said that trying to negotiate with Vladimir Putin is like negotiating with a crocodile that has your leg in its jaws.
To celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday today, a new photograph has been released. It was taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Her Majesty pictured with two of her white fell ponies. She's at Sandringham, staying at a house that was loved by her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh.
The Children's Commissioner says England should think about banning the smacking of children, just like Scotland and Wales have. Dame Rachel de Souza has showed her support for altering the law to ensure children and adults share the same protection from assault.
We go through the newspapers now in the company of Liz Kershaw and the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Mr. David Wooding. Lovely to see you both. And David, you say happy birthday to Her Majesty.
Yeah, so I picked the Daily Express here, that picture of Her Maj on the front page with the two ponies and the headline, "Happy 96th birthday, ma'am." I quite like the magnolia bushes behind the back.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Spectacular. The Express have done it well inside. They've done a spread as well, where they've done pictures of the Queen on various birthdays, including the first picture of her as a child. And it's often forgotten when we talk about the Queen. I mean, she's been part of our life, all of our lives since the day we were all born. That she was born as a minor royal because she was aged 10 when the king abdicated.
And this wasn't to be her destiny.
No, she would just have been a minor royal, and her father then took over the throne, and suddenly she was next in line to the throne. And hasn't she had an amazing reign?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we stay with the royal story, Liz, as we go to you. This is front page of the Daily Mail, and they're saying palace shock at Harry, and they call him the Prince of Delusion.
Well, I used to really like him. I used to think, of all the members of the royal family, I'd love to have a night in the pub with Harry. You know, it would be kind of wild. And I just thought he was strangely down to earth, but I don't think he can possibly be described as that now. I think he's up in the clouds. It's so changed. I thought what shocked me most yesterday, and it's picked up on in the papers, was when he was in this interview for TV, another kind of really indiscreet, disloyal interview, and it was asked about his relationship with his father, and he batted it off and he said, "Oh, I'm here to talk about the Invictus Games, not my family." And the next question was, "Do you ever think about your mother?" "Oh, onion from pocket. Yes, she's with me every hour of the day," you know. And I thought, well, there's double standards. It's such a PR machine that he's so much a part of now, and strangely being down to earth when you're a member of the royal family with all its money and privileges and status, and then going and living in California and losing that down to earth, natural attitude to life. He just seems completely self-obsessed, and he can't have any consideration. I would never have done what he's done to my grandma. You know, I could think if she'd been sat there and I'd left and then slagged off the family and she hadn't seen me she would have literally died of a broken heart. And I can't help thinking that the Queen's failing health is obviously something to do with her age, the death of her lifelong partner, the Duke of Edinburgh, but this can't help either, can it?
But, you know, I sometimes wonder if the Queen actually likes a naughty boy. I mean, the Duke of Edinburgh was cheeky. She loves Prince Andrew. Prince Harry's causing her headaches, but she just can't resist them. There's an argument to be said for it.
Poor William, it's so boring, he doesn't get a look in.
What's fascinating is the silence from Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace. I mean, to say that he's there to protect his grandmother when he's living across the lake in America, and he's been there for 2 years and hasn't shown his face. I think the Queen needs protecting from him more than anybody else.
I read one phrase the palace wheeled out, one of the papers wheeled out in relation to the palace's response was weary consternation at yet another public interview. I thought that summed it up perfectly. Here we go again.
Do you really think he'll pitch up on the balcony, waving to the crowds within the fold?
No, I just can't see it. I can't see if he's got a forthcoming book on which he's going to be quite negative towards Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, or his father as well. And bear in mind, Charles becomes king of the castle when the Queen goes. And he better be very careful as to what side his bread is buttered or his royal title and everything else. But
all I'd say is within every, kind of in his defence, but also just to make it a bit more interesting, within every family there are secrets.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one big secret that is Harry's ace card. That he knows, that they know, and we don't know. And that's the foundation of all that. Oh, David's suddenly nodding and got a twinkle in his eye.
What do you know that he knows that we don't know?
I'd like to find out.
David, let's talk about this Rwanda deal. A really interesting sort of reaction to this now. We've had upset from the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now it seems staff within the Home Office aren't on board with this deal and are threatening to strike over it.
Yes, there's quite a. There's going to be a Zoom call today with the Permanent Secretary Matthew Rycroft with the staff, and the Daily Mail have rather cleverly got hold of all the emails that have been flying around, and people are describing it, members of staff, as totally unethical. And somebody else even invokes the phrase used in the Nazi war trials in Nuremberg that we are only obeying orders. And other people saying they feel queasy about it, and can we refuse to take part in this? I mean, my view is that civil servants are there to serve the elected government of the day, and like it or not, this government was elected by our democratic system, and as were previous governments, and that's how it works, I'm afraid. And if you want to serve a government, then you have to do what you're told. But Home Office has many times been accused by previous Home Secretaries not being fit for purpose, and perhaps this is a bit of a clue as to why Priti Patel is having such a problem trying to deal with the migration crisis and reforming the asylum system, and why previous Home Secretaries have had a lot of trouble getting their job done.
It's the Sir Humphreys. We can go right back, can't we, 40 years to Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, and that's what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, and still as funny and relevant and pertinent
Timeless,
today. I was watching one last week, and we'll go to the front page of the Times. PM promises another lockdown parties vote to delay danger. Tell us more, Elizabeth.
Well, you know what? I keep saying I'm not outraged that there was some cake and fizz served in Downing Street, a workplace, also a home, where people were working cheek to jowl, day in, day out, so that many of these people who are now getting outraged could sit at home on furlough, watching back-to-back box sets on Netflix and having Deliveroo bring them takeaways round. Yes, people suffered in lockdown, but also we were protected, and this number 10 was mission control, and I don't begrudge them some socialising. And I've written a list here of things that do outrage me. Waiting lists in the NHS, we're coming on to that while we're here this morning. Also in the NHS, all the women who've been damaged permanently and suffered agonising pain with wire mesh. The baby deaths, 200 dead babies, mothers in that same hospital ripped to shreds and ruined for life. Old people being shoved in care homes like sitting targets for COVID with lack of PPE. People who've lost loved ones on so-called smart motorways, which are now having to be reviewed. Current fuel prices, the oil price has gone down, but the petrol hasn't at the pumps, and the Chancellor's still carving off fuel duty and VAT, compounded by VAT on that. British Gas, also the standing charges on the electricity and gas bill have gone up, as well as the per unit of energy. Why? It's the same infrastructure, unjustifiable. Food shortages, I've noticed quite a few products missing off the shelves. And also the prices, like a bag of spinach was like 90p and it was £2.25 the other day. The police, going round investigating whether somebody had a piece of Victoria sponge when they can't attend if your car's vandalised or even if you're burgled. And all this hoo-ha over, immigration and the lack of control over our borders. Then, on the other hand, you've got people queuing 5 hours at mile-long queues in airports because there aren't enough border control staff and they've had to shift them to Dover, and so people going on that. I mean, there's so many things that are wrong and need attending to. And this is just a red herring, but actually it's just an undemocratic process where the opposition parties, Labour, SNP, Lib Dems, no, they can't win a general election. The only chance they've got is to unseat Boris Johnson, who's the Tory vote catcher, and then they might have a hope in hell. And that's all this is about, and it's pathetic. Arguing on the TV over whether somebody had a piece of cake, a glass of Prosecco. We've got beer and pizza. I put a poll yesterday on Twitter. Which outrages you more? Prosecco and cake, beer and pizza. How about pizza and cake? What about if they had Prosecco and beer? And people took it seriously. It's just wrong.
OK.
Well, I tell you what also is wrong, and I'll just leave it at this, that someone dies and you can't be with them, or that you can't attend their funeral because of a law made by a man who's having Prosecco and cake.
No, OK, well, let's discuss that later, but I couldn't do that. My mum died in a care home and I hadn't seen her for 2 weeks, and she hadn't been seen by a doctor for 2 weeks. And I don't think that anything that happened I don't believe, if I did, I'd be angry, but I don't believe that anything that happened as far as people gathering socially in a workplace caused any more deaths than there were. I think a lot of things caused deaths during the pandemic.
To be continued.
Yeah.
To be continued. Should we talk, as you hinted about them, David, and finish on this one? In the Times, they're talking about waiting lists, particularly in relation to GPs. We're the worst in the West.
Yes, the government have pledged to have 6,000 more GPs by 2024. It looks like the government's going to miss that massively. We're now at a 25-year low of GPs. There's 800 surgeries have closed in the last 8 years, and there's a 6.2 million backlog of NHS treatments, and more people, it says in the Times, are turning to private medicine.
Could I ask a simple question, David? Why are they missing that target? What is the problem? Why aren't they encouraging young people, students, professionals to be doctors? What is the problem?
Well, they are. I mean, some people...
What, people don't want to do it, is that...
Very underqualified.
Yes, underqualified, and some of them are becoming trained as doctors, don't want to go into general practice. That's the problem. The last Labour government gave them great terms and conditions for doctors, you know, no weekend surgeries, no nighttime calls.
But they've wrecked the pensions, haven't they?
Pensions, and that's the problem.
OK, guys, got to leave it there. Thank you for the moment. David and Liz will be back in 40 minutes' time. Hope you can join us again for that. Texas' oldest death row inmate, Carl Bunneton, will be executed today in Huntsville. He's 81 years of age. He's due to be executed for a murder back in 1991 of a police officer, James Irby.
Well, we're now joined by exonerated death row inmate and author of Infinite Hope, How Wrongful Conviction, Solitary Confinement and 12 Years on Death Row Failed to Kill My Soul. What a story. Anthony Graves, good morning to you. Look, we'll talk about your own story in a moment, but I'm just interested in why you think a convicted criminal should be spared the law of that particular state and not face death row today.
Well, you know, Mr. Bunnan has been on death row for nearly 30 years. That in itself is cruel and unusual punishment. And then on top of that, now they're talking about executing him. You've killed this man 30 years. For 30 years, he's lived in hell. And now he's 81 years old. He's an older man. And we're still talking about killing him for something he did 30 years ago. But we took his life 30 years ago. And now we want to just lay him to rest. I mean, he can't do us any harm now, you know, and as a nation, as a country.
But Anthony, it doesn't matter. Anthony, it doesn't matter whether he can do us any harm now. He did do harm. He did do harm, and surely he's got to pay the price for that.
And he has 30 years of his life. He has. From a young man, now he's an older man. He's older than you, sir. He's 81 years old. You know, when do we say enough is enough? I mean, we've killed him. We've taken his life for the last 30 years. You know, yeah. So I don't understand.
The interesting thing is, Anthony, is the waiting on death row to have to be found guilty. And then, as you say, all these years then to wait to find out if someone's going to give you that injection or flick that switch or whatever it's going to be. I mean, you've been there. You have done that. What is that wait like?
You know, every day you have this whole threat of death over your head by a state that you love, right? For something that you may or may not have done. In my situation, I knew absolutely nothing about the crime. I wasn't a criminal, but yet I found myself on death row. It's barbaric. It's barbaric in its nature. It's barbaric in its practice, and it's a barbaric law. You know, we're talking about taking someone's life, finality, and if we get it wrong, we cannot give that back. Now, I don't know what Mr. Bunton's situation is, whether he's guilty or he's innocent, but he's given us, we've taken 30 years of his life. He's 81 years old, you know, and as us as human beings, I mean, at some point we're supposed to show some sort of humanity for the elderly, you know, and I understand he did a crime 30 years ago. 30 years ago. A lot of people listening to your show probably weren't even born.
Yeah, and look, that was 3 times almost as long as you served on death row, and your story just unbelievable. I mean, luckily your sentence was overturned, but 12 years in on death row, what were you accused of? And how does it feel to know that you're innocent and every night go to sleep in jail thinking about imminent death?
Yeah, I was accused of murdering an entire family, right? 4 children, a grandmother, a teenage daughter. They were shot, stabbed, bludgeoned to death. The house was burnt down in an obvious attempt to cover up the crime. And so a young man just called my name because they told him they would let him go if he called the name of someone who could have done the crime with him. And that's all it took. No evidence whatsoever. But that's all it took to take a young black man off the streets and put him on death row. I had alibi witnesses and everything, but it wasn't enough to stop the state of Texas from trying to murder an innocent citizen. It was just a nightmare every day.
Yeah.
But Anthony, you went through then what you went through, and your book, it talks about how being on death row failed to kill your soul. What did you learn? And what is your book about? Infinite hope? What do you mean by infinite hope? What did you learn about yourself?
Yeah, you know, and I'll tell you a quick story. The first time they gave me an execution date, they took me to the office of the captain and they set me there to tell me that the state of Texas had called them and they was giving me an execution date. And they wanted me to tell them what I wanted them to do with my body and what I wanted my last meal to be. And I remember the first thought that came into my mind that just really saved my life. And I said to myself, I'm just going to live till I die, because they can't do nothing about that. And so what I learned in all of that is that no matter what you go through, you have a choice as to how you want to respond to it. It is not the act against you that defines you. It's how you respond to that act. And when I figured that out, I realized that, hey, look, just because they're treating me unjustly doesn't excuse me for being a bad, trying to be what they saying I am. I need to still be who I am as a good person. I still have that choice to be the good man that I am. And I'm not going to let them take that from me, because I can give that. They can't take it. And so I refuse to give the good character, the person that my mom raised, away just because they had done something wrong to me. That's what I learned, is that no matter what, you still have a choice as to how you're going to respond to anything that happens in your life. And that should give you hope.
Yeah, Anthony Charles Graves is a really positive message, and I suppose it applies to all of us, whether we are on death row or not, to live life to the fullest. We never know what is around the corner. Really interesting to get your, I hope, unique experience of being wrongly convicted and on death row. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much indeed. And
wow, what a story.
Anthony's story in relation to Texas's oldest death row inmate, Carl Bunneton, will be executed today at the penitentiary in Huntsville. Anthony's book, Exonerated Death, how wrongful conviction failed to kill his soul. On that. Let's take a break. We're back on this, the Queen's birthday, after this.
Hello, good morning. I'm Luke Mile with your weather forecast. And this Thursday morning is going to be a bit of a chilly one out there first thing. Temperatures have fallen away overnight, but through the day we'll see plenty of warm sunshine away from those eastern coasts. Now, we will start to see an easterly wind feeding in over the next few days, with the high pressure to the north and lower pressure down towards the southwest. It does mean that things will turn a bit cooler along those eastern coasts, and already we're starting to see that through this morning with this low cloud here drifting onto the coasts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. But by and large, most places will see a fine and fair day, lots of sunshine around across the UK. A little bit more cloud developing though for England and Wales through the afternoon, turning that sunshine a little bit hazier through the afternoon. But where we do see the sunshine, those temperatures getting up to 18 degrees, that's 64 in Fahrenheit. Now through Thursday afternoon and evening, we'll see plenty of sunshine to end the day. A lot of this cloud will melt away, so for many, a fair end to the day. But overnight, we start to see that easterly wind turning a bit stronger, drifting in this low cloud and mist and haar, so it will turn a bit grey and a bit murky, I think, for some places, particularly in the east as we go to the small hours of Friday. Some clear skies, though, but with more wind and a bit more cloud in general, temperatures won't be as low as what they were on Thursday morning. And that cloud could be thick enough at times through Friday morning to give a few spits and spots of rain across southern areas. Nothing particularly heavy, but at times there will be a little bit more cloud and rain here. But the best of sunshine will be further north, particularly northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northwest England. We'll see some fair weather here through the day. Temperatures still not doing too bad where we've got the sunshine, but with the cloud and with the cooler wind, it will feel quite chilly along those North Sea coasts and under any of this thicker cloud. And that's the trend really as we go through the next few days. Those temperatures sliding down somewhat, and there will be a few showers at times, particularly for more southern areas. Of course, I'll be back later with an update for you. Take care.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister has touched down in India overnight as he attempts to deepen economic and defence ties with the country.
A very good morning to you just after 7 o'clock. This is Thursday, the 21st of April. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. On this, the Queen's birthday. Leading the news this morning.
The Prime Minister has landed in India for a two-day trade trip intended to strengthen ties with the country. He's hinted the UK could let in more skilled migrants from India in return for a post-Brexit trade deal. The Queen celebrates her 96th birthday today at Sandringham. It's been reported that she'll be staying at a small and intimate cottage on the estate, said to have a strong association with her late husband, Prince Philip.
Russia has test-launched a nuclear-capable missile. Vladimir Putin boasting it will give his country's enemies food for thought. It comes as a Chechen warlord loyal to Putin claims that the Ukrainian city of Mariupol will fall by lunchtime today.
And Julian Assange's American extradition order has been sent to the Home Secretary for a final decision. Priti Patel will now decide if the United States request meets the legal criteria, including a promise not to kill the WikiLeaks founder.
And you've been joining in on our debate with this. You know what to do. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, or the Twitter is at gbnews. On Assange, Terry says if Britain extradites Assange, it will be a disgrace. Jim says, though he broke the law, he deserves his punishment if he's released information that resulted in military deaths, especially. A lot of you in praise of our newspaper reviewer Liz Kershaw today, and her views on Partygate. And well, that's enough.
Enough of that.
That's enough about that. Top story today: the Prime Minister has arrived in India for a trip aimed at strengthening economic and defence ties with the country.
So the Prime Minister arrived in Gujarat this morning. It's a 48-hour visit to the country as part of his goal to secure a post-Brexit trade deal.
So what's he going to do? Yeah, he's going to hold one-on-one meetings with the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, with new announcements on trade and security expected with that one.
Well, as part of discussions in India, the UK government has hinted that rules on skilled workers from India could be relaxed if it meant a deal could be struck by the end of the year. Let's talk to Tom Harwood about all of this, our political correspondent. He joins us in the studio. Good morning to you. Prime Minister being welcomed with huge billboards in Gujarat. They're very excited to have Boris Johnson on Indian territory. A big moment. Do you think that this could produce some sort of post-Brexit trade deal? And what will the trade-off be?
Well, this has been a long time coming. Since he became Prime Minister, the Prime Minister has been desperate to get to India. This has been a trip that has been delayed time and time again by various means, most notably COVID. And the last time this trip was meant to happen was just when that Indian variant of COVID, as we were then calling it, started to take off, and it all got kicked into the long grass. Well, that looks to be thankfully behind us enough now, and the Prime Minister finally able to make it out there. Of course, a two-day visit, first in Gujarat today and then in New Delhi tomorrow. And interestingly, talking to people around this visit, the situation when it comes to trade is much further forward than many people had expected. We'd heard for a long time that the Indians wouldn't really be wanting a fully fledged trade deal, that there'd need to be migration provisions attached, that there were a number of sticking points. But actually, the way things have moved in the last couple of months seem to be incredibly positive on this front. And many people are talking in the terms that we could well see a fully fledged trade deal with India, one of the largest countries in the world, one of over 1 billion people, by the end of the year.
Right, and the conditions of that would be in relation to workers, sort of relaxing the rules a bit so more Indians can come to the UK.
That's certainly true, and that wouldn't be inconsistent with what the Prime Minister was talking about through the Brexit campaign. If you remember, the idea of controlled immigration is very different from the idea of halted immigration, the idea that you might want to crack down on unskilled migrants, but potentially increase the number of skilled migrants. So whether that's tech titans or doctors or whatever else it is, being able to have a looser relationship there with countries like India, which of course have a long history.
And we can see how this has to benefit us. We just did a newspaper review and we're talking about the lack of GPs, for instance. I mean, you can see, Tom, would you happen to know what areas we are likely to trade and what things, what commodities, back and forward, what we trade with India, what India trades with us?
Well, there's obviously a huge and growing and developing economy in India, one of the largest countries in the world. Technology is one of the big sectors, and a lot of exciting startups happening in India. And of course, the UK prides itself on being the country in this region of the world with the most what are called unicorns. Those are tech companies worth over $1 billion US. And we've got more unicorns in the United Kingdom than France, than Germany, than Israel put together. It's a really exciting space. So I think tech is going to be a big part of this. But also, part of this discussion that the Prime Minister is having with Narendra Modi isn't just about trade. This is also about defence and security. And India has not been as forthright as many of those countries in the West when it comes to the question of Russia. In fact, India has a huge amount of trade with Russia. It's a country that is not far away. They have a strong defence partnership. They have a strong energy partnership.
This is fascinating. You talk about this whole geopolitical area, and it's as if India has got many suitors. Right? China's in there, Russia's in there, we're in there. Can we actually say to India, now listen, I'm your boyfriend now from here on in.
Exclusive.
Exclusive. Don't be sidling up to Russia on this. India is in this unique position where they'll say, no, we're going out with Russia, we're going out with India, we'll see you on a Saturday night, whatever. They can pick and choose, can't they?
It's interesting looking at the relationship that India has had with Russia. It's been very close for many decades. Many people in India feel an affinity towards the Russian people. And of course, during those tricky times during the Cold War, more often than not, potentially, India would take the side of the USSR as it was then. Well, things have moved on in India. Of course, Narendra Modi is of the BJP, a party of the right, rather than the Congress party that was in power for so long beforehand. And indeed, Narendra Modi has a personal relationship with Boris Johnson. He was down in Cornwall for the G7 summit. In many ways, the G7 summit became the D10 summit. They invited 3 extra big democratic countries to that. So India was one of those participants, along with South Korea and Australia. So this is a relationship that has been building over time. I don't think anyone's expecting India to do an about turn on its position on Russia, and the United Kingdom has been very clear over the last few days. It doesn't want to lecture, it wants to try and go along with. But it will be very interesting to see what is said in this space over the next 48 hours.
As usual, Boris Johnson travelling with a huddle, a fleet of journalists, whatever you want to describe, what would you want to call a collective of journalists, as a gaggle or a herd. And he's already been invoking sort of Churchillian language this morning in relation to Putin. We've heard sort of appeasement and crocodile analogies used before. This morning he's been describing how hard negotiations are with Putin. Tell us about that.
Yes, the Prime Minister obviously wanting to talk about the international situation, as he was trying to do in the House of Commons yesterday when Sir Keir Starmer used his Prime Minister's questions to talk about internal mechanics within parliamentary scandal rather than looking to the wider issues abroad. But clearly there are negotiations that were sort of started about just over a month ago with regard to the Ukrainians and the Russians. The UK has not wanted to be a direct participant in those negotiations, saying that Ukraine should speak for itself. But obviously those negotiations become very, very tricky as Russia starts to unleash its full frontal assault within the Donbass. It seems that the UK will be backing up Mr. Zelensky in whatever way the UK can.
Yeah, and Boris saying, how can you negotiate with a crocodile when it has your leg in its jaw? Interesting. Tom, thank you. Always good to talk to you. See you again a little bit later in the programme.
Well, apparently you stick your fingers in its eyes, don't you?
Is that what you do?
Apparently that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, good negotiating tactic. I'll remember that.
Or your fingers up its nostrils.
I'd like to you lose your fingers while you do that, I'd imagine.
You fight dirty.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Poke the eye. Congratulations, good morning to Her Majesty the Queen, who's spending her 96th birthday at Sandringham today, where her husband, Prince Philip, spent much of his retirement.
Well, our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has been looking back at her legacy.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
Her Majesty the Queen, speaking in 2015 when she overtook her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria as Britain's longest reigning monarch. This year, we celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne. Trooping the Colour is a large part of June's celebrations and has marked the official birthday of the British sovereign for more than 2 centuries. But today, we celebrate the Queen's actual birthday. 96 years ago, the then Princess Elizabeth was born, not in a palace, but in a townhouse. She wasn't expected to be Queen, But her uncle, King Edward VIII's sudden abdication to marry an American divorcee propelled Elizabeth up the line of succession.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
Even on her birthday, Her Majesty continues with duties and works through her daily red box of government papers. 14 British Prime Ministers have served her, as well as 15 Australian and 12 Canadians. She has advised and guided each of them through troubled times, while always knowing when to lighten the mood.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
This week, it reveals the Queen's corgis were an absolute joy for her during the coronavirus pandemic. Her Majesty's personal advisor, Angela Kelly, reveals in a new chapter of her book that the Queen often took her dogs on long walks and were a great comfort when her late husband, Prince Philip, was in hospital. Her Majesty's 2 corgi puppies, Mick and Sandy, were a present from the Queen's son, Prince Andrew, and his daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. It's unknown what birthday presents are on offer this year, but Her Majesty is expected to mark the day privately.
Day, a very special day it is. Let's go to Cameron Walker, our royal reporter. And Cameron, as you can see there, he's bang in front of Buckingham Palace. My friend, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Yes, the Queen, 96 years old today, and she still had the strength to travel from her home at Windsor Castle to Sandringham. It's over 100 miles. She went via helicopter. We understand she's staying at Wood Farm, which is a place she spent many happy times with the Duke of Edinburgh. The Duke of Edinburgh spent a majority of his retirement there. And perhaps this new photograph that's been released last night is another tribute to Prince Philip. Her Majesty was wearing Edinburgh Green, the Duke of Edinburgh's colours, pictured with 2 felled ponies. It was taken in the grounds of Windsor Castle in March, and it was commissioned by the Royal Windsor Horse Show, which is putting on a big spectacular for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June. It's called A Gallop Through History, and it features those 2 ponies, which you see in the image there. Now, today, for the Queen's birthday celebration, the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery is going to be firing a 41-gun salute in Hyde Park. That's at midday. The Band of the Scots Guards will also perform Happy Birthday there. And at the Tower of London, the Honourable Artillery Company will fire a 61-gun salute. But as for Her Majesty, we're expecting her to mark the day privately at Sandringham, and no doubt she'll be visited by family and friends in the coming days.
Thank you, and a lovely sunny day it looks as well, and lovely blooms behind you there as well, Cameron. Appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Just coming up, creeping up to 7:15. A very good morning to you, Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster here at breakfast on GB News.
The Prime Minister, as we've been hearing, has landed in India to start his 2-day visit for talks with his counterpart Narendra Modi about a trade deal between the UK and India. Boris Johnson's hinted that the post-Brexit deal will include accepting Delhi's demands for an increase in migration to the UK.
And to celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday, this photograph has been released. It was taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle, and Her Majesty there with 2 of her white fell ponies. She's at Sandringham today before she heads into London to Buckingham Palace because it was very dear to her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Well, it is day 57 of the invasion of Ukraine, and Russia's deadline for Ukrainian troops to surrender in the besieged city of Mariupol has passed, with a commander warning his forces could survive just days or even hours. Well, a top ally of Russia's President Vladimir Putin said Russian forces will seize the last main stronghold of resistance in Mariupol today. Meanwhile, President Zelensky says he's ready to swap Russian prisoners to secure safe passage for civilians. Let's get more on all of this from Ukrainian political scientist Boden Ben. Very good morning to you, joining us from Lviv. Look, the situation in Mariupol feeling extremely grave today. We had those warnings from a Ukrainian Marine commander there saying that he thought they could be in their last hours there. There, of course, not only are troops, but also many women and children sheltering there. And then the Chechen warlord at the same time saying they could fall by lunchtime. Where do you read this going?
So the problem is really, the main problem is about civilians, because soldiers, they have chosen that way to fight till the very end. They are ready for this. But the situation about civilians, it's really scary as for me, because most of those civilians who are in Mariupol, in Azovstal factory, where is this last stronghold of Ukrainian forces. So most of them are wanted by Russia because they were either relatives of soldiers, or they had some political roles in Mariupol, or even just cultural figures and like that. And most of them are not likely to pass those Russian filtration camps that Russia sets for civilians. As you know, according to preliminary data, on average, like 5% of people don't pass them, and then those people disappear. Nobody actually knows what has happened to them. So, and that's really a terrible situation about this around 1,000 civilians who are hiding in these bunkers of Azovstal. And also we have about 500, maybe up to 1,000 wounded soldiers who are also there. And their fate can also be quite grim.
And of course, President Zelensky offering to release Russian troops in exchange for the safe passage of civilians from there. All the while, President Putin yesterday testing his new missiles capable of carrying these nukes, which he claims can overcome all modern defences. A dire warning to the West. How worried are you about that?
I think we should not be too much, we shouldn't overestimate Russian capabilities, as you have seen already with this Moscow ship. Yeah, it was like their main ship in the Black Sea Fleet, but it was quite easily hit by Ukrainian missile, which is, by the way, not the best missile. It's, of course, we upgraded it in the 2019, but still it's not the best missile in the world, and it hit this Russian ship. So I think quite the same is about those Russian so-called missiles that don't have any similar missiles in the world, any rivals. We shouldn't overestimate this. Of course, there is danger, but as you have already seen for 2 months, Ukrainian forces are quite successfully holding the line. And I think if the world wasn't that scary about Putin, we would already defeat him if Ukraine was provided with more weapons, in particular attack weapons.
Quite successful. A lot of people would say been very successful. Boden Bent, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much. Ukrainian political scientist joining us from Lviv this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, all change at the top of the English Premier League. Again, big night of football last night. The latest sports stories with Paul Coyte after the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Luke Mile with your weather forecasts. And this Thursday morning is going to be a bit of a chilly one out there first thing. Temperatures have fallen away overnight, but through the day we'll see plenty of warm sunshine away from those eastern coasts. Now, we will start to see an easterly wind feeding in over the next few days with the high pressure to the north and lower pressure down towards the southwest. It does mean that things will turn a bit cooler along those eastern coasts, and already we're starting to see that through this morning with this low cloud here drifting onto the coasts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. But by and large, most places will see a fine and fair day, lots of sunshine around across the UK. A little bit more cloud developing though for England and Wales through the afternoon, turning that sunshine a little bit hazier through the afternoon. But where we do see the sunshine, those temperatures getting up to 18 degrees, that's 64 in Fahrenheit. Now, through Thursday afternoon and evening, we'll see plenty of sunshine to end the day. A lot of this cloud will melt away, so for many, a fair end to the day. But overnight, we start to see that easterly wind turning a bit stronger, drifting in this low cloud and mist and haar, so it will turn a bit grey and a bit murky, I think, for some places, particularly in the east as we go to the small hours of Friday. Some clear skies, though, but with more wind and a bit more cloud in general, temperatures won't be as low as what they were on Thursday morning. And that cloud could be thick enough at times through Friday morning to give a few spits and spots of rain across southern areas. Nothing particularly heavy, but at times there will be a little bit more cloud and rain here. But the best of sunshine will be further north, particularly northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northwest England. We'll see some fair weather here through the day. Temperatures still not doing too bad where we've got the sunshine, but with the cloud and with the cooler wind, it will feel quite chilly along those North Sea coasts and under any of this thicker cloud. And that's the trend really as we go through the next few days. Those temperatures sliding down somewhat, and there will be a few showers at times, particularly for more southern areas. Of course, I'll be back later with an update for you. Take care.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Very good to see you again. Still to come this morning.
We're celebrating the Queen's 96th birthday today. The biographer Robert Hardman will be sharing his stories and talking about that lovely photograph that has been released by Buckingham Palace to commemorate Her Majesty's birthday. That's just after 8 o'clock this morning. Also today, we'll be talking about that shocking photograph. You can see that went viral across the world, made the front pages of newspapers here as well, after a Ukrainian family wrote the contact details of her across her back. We'll be speaking to her desperate mother, who felt forced to do that as she finds safety in France with her little girl. That's at around 8:45.
OK, all that to come. Right now, here is the sport. All change at the top of the English Premier League again. Here's Paul Coyte. So, Man City back top of the table.
Yep. Look for a moment that possibly Brighton might pull off what they did before against Arsenal and what they did against Spurs playing away, whether they might get another 3 points. But Manchester City, different animal, and they've got to keep going. They've just got to keep rolling along. It's now over to Liverpool now to try and win their next game. Just so tight at the top. Yeah. And Man City 3, Brighton 0. And Pep Guardiola called City exceptional again, so very impressive there. So it's like nobody's blinking. Nobody's blinking. And I'm trying to work out who I think's going to take it.
Well, it's literally game by game.
It really is. 1 minute I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, no, it's going to be Liverpool. Definitely Liverpool. Then I look at Man City last night, and I'm thinking about, where do you stand on this?
Well, Man United having been demolished by Liverpool on Tuesday night, I definitely thought Liverpool. But again, like you, where's City going to slip up again?
Absolutely, absolutely.
No?
It's really going down to the wire. And, of course, they're all fighting on different fronts because we've got Champions League as well that they're fighting for, Premier League. And so, anyway, who knows? And Liverpool going for 4. So whether they can actually do the quadruple, I mean, that would be something.
I wouldn't have predicted the result at Stamford Bridge last night, Chelsea going down to Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal scoring 4 goals away from home against Chelsea.
They've lost three games on the bounce, and they go to Chelsea. But then again, Chelsea at home have also been really bad. They've lost 3 games on the bounce at home. So Chelsea 2, Arsenal 4. Chelsea, I mean, some of the mistakes were just unbelievable. Azpilicueta at the end gives away a penalty, and that was just crazy decision. So the fight there, so we're not only talking about the top of the table, but now that fight for 4th place, because you know, your Manchester United, they're not out of it. I mean, we know how bad...
Well, they're not out of what?
They're not out of top 4. You'd think so.
Good luck with that.
Well, I mean, I think so. But, I mean, it's still in the chance. I'm just looking at the top here. Spurs are in 4th. played 32 games, 57 points. Then we've got Arsenal below them on the same points. And
we've played a game more. We've played a game more.
But they're not necessarily won games. That's the thing. Spurs have got to go to Brentford, and that's going to be tricky. So it really is tight. I think as far as the top four is concerned, Chelsea are there, but Spurs v Arsenal on May the 12th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which could settle it.
Well, let's look at the bottom then, and the Everton last night. Very useful result for them against Leicester.
Huge.
They are now 14 off the drop zone, so that's good for them.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that's off the bottom there, but Everton, Burnley. Obviously, Sean Dyche is gone, so new manager, whether it's going to be a new manager bounce or a lack of manager bounce. Everton, 4 points just above Burnley there. But Everton, I mean, it was a huge point for Everton yesterday. Leicester, and it went right down to the wire again, last minute. So that, who knows how important that goal could be and how much that point could be.
Newcastle beating Palace. I mean, they've secured their position then in the Premier League for next year. They're okay.
They're absolutely fine. And it's all about, for Newcastle, now there's a lot of money there on what players they can attract and see how far. Because I honestly do think that within a couple of years, I think they're going to be up there. They're going to be a superpower because the amount of money they've got. Look,
let's talk tennis now. And before I get on to Emma Raducanu, I just want to talk about these tennis bodies, right? So Wimbledon say, right, we're not going to promote the Russian nation. We're not going to give Russia this sort of publicity on the world stage, so we're banning Russian players.
Correct.
Then the players' unions, male and female, come out and they say, oh, no, this is not good. How can these sports people say, we're anti-war, we're against what's happening in Ukraine? They make all these announcements, and yet then their unions come out and say, no, this is awful that you're banning Russian players.
Well, I mean, if we just look at it, it's all very well for players to be able to, or for unions, you've got the ATP and also the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association as well, that are coming out and saying this is a disgrace and that these players should be allowed to play. But, there's only one disgrace that we can see in this whole situation, and that's what's going over in Ukraine. And that's where the sympathy surely should be. As far as players are concerned, we've seen teams in football that are banned. We've seen Formula One drivers that are banned. So why tennis should be exempt from this, I don't know. Wimbledon have come out and said this. And by the way, the French Open, they're still going to be open to Belarusian and Russian players. Wimbledon said, in the circumstances of such unjustified and unprecedented military aggression, it'd be unacceptable for the Russian regime to derive any benefits from the involvement of Russian Belarusian players within the championship. I think they're particularly worried if we've got Daniil Medvedev, who's the world number 2. Now, a lot of these tennis players have come out and have said, yes, we're anti-war and we don't like war and we're for peace. But exactly what that truly means. They're not denouncing what's going on with Putin, with what's going on in their country and what they're doing. They're saying they're for peace, which is all very well. But there was also talk that maybe they should sign some sort of document that said how they feel about Putin and therefore they're completely against what's going on. But there's also the worry that then that would affect families where that they have back in Russia and also the Belarus. But anyway, all that being said, that's what Wimbledon have decided. That's what they've decided to do. And there will be no Russians or Belarusians playing at Wimbledon this year.
Well, meanwhile, Emma Raducanu is on clay and she won her first tour match, her WTA tour match. And this is in Stuttgart.
Yeah, she's in Stuttgart and she's never played in a major tournament on clay before. There is the worry because she's been through problems with... Look at the picture. I don't know whether this is actually helping her. If you look at the shirt she's wearing that might look familiar, which happens to be a Tottenham Hotspur football shirt there, Eamonn. I don't know whether this is something...
Is that rigged up?
No, it's absolutely straight. I mean, this is... It? I wasn't really sure, but now I have so much respect for her as a human being and as a tennis player.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a break. 7:30 is the time. Going through the newspapers, and this morning we've got...
David Wooding and Liz Kershaw. They'll be here in just a moment. See you then.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The time is 7:33. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines. And the Prime Minister's just landed in India for talks with his counterpart there, Narendra Modi, about a potential trade deal between the UK and India. Boris Johnson has hinted that the post-Brexit deal will include accepting Delhi's demands for an increase in migration to the UK.
To celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday today, this photo has been released. It was taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle, and Her Majesty's pictured with two of her white fell ponies. She's in Sandringham staying at a house loved by her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh.
The Children's Commissioner says England should think about banning the smacking of children, just like Scotland and Wales have. Dame Rachel de Souza has showed her support for altering the law to ensure children and adults share the same protection from assault.
So at 11:30 this morning, a big debate's going to take part, and MPs are going to vote on a motion tabled by the Labour Party, and actually not only by the Labour Party, I think everybody's involved there, signed by the Lib Dems, SNP, Plaid Cymru, SDLP Alliance. It's going to be debated anyway, and this would trigger an investigation by the House's Privileges Committee into whether the Prime Minister deliberately misled Parliament.
Yes, and Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Wes Streeting, joins us now to tell us more. Do you think the timing is right for this? I mean, there are expected to be perhaps more fines. We haven't yet had the Sue Gray report. Why don't we just wait until all this is over before prolonging everything?
Well, the Committee of Privileges will certainly give those inquiries the chance to report their findings and take that into account, but the work has to get underway. As to whether the timing's right, I mean, personally, I think this is overdue. We've given Conservative MPs plenty of space and time to hold their own leader, our Prime Minister, to account for the fact that not only did he break the rules that he imposed on the country, that people followed doing the right thing, often at great personal pain and sacrifice, he then broke the rules and then lied about it regularly, repeatedly, to Parliament, to the country, even to the Queen. And that kind of behaviour has to be held to account. I genuinely couldn't imagine that any of Boris Johnson's Conservative predecessors in my lifetime, Margaret Thatcher, John Major, David Cameron, Theresa May, I couldn't imagine any of them behaving quite like this. Not just breaking the law, but lying about it and then clinging on in these circumstances. They would have gone by now. Boris Johnson should have gone by now. Conservative MPs should have removed him by now. But in the absence of accountability within the Conservative Party, Parliament has to hold him to account for the fact that he's lied to Parliament.
There is a really strong contingent of people, most of them it seems watching this programme, who really don't believe your motives and don't believe what you're saying there. They say, Labour in particular, you know you can't win an election. All you want to do is to give grief to Boris Johnson, to unseat Boris Johnson, to give yourselves a fighting chance. In your defence, what would you say to that?
Two things. Firstly, a majority of people in this country believe that Boris Johnson broke the rules. A majority of people believe he lied about it. A majority of people believe that he wasn't being sincere with his apology, and a majority of people believe he should resign. But putting that to one side, where the public are, this is actually about a point of principle. I do want Boris Johnson out. I want a Conservative government out. We know in the Labour Party the only way we get a change of government is by winning a general election. So what's happening today doesn't alter that basic fact. But there is a fundamental principle we have to uphold in our democracy, which is about how people in the highest office in the land conduct themselves. We have to hold Boris Johnson to account for the fact that he not just broke the law, but lied about it, lied to Parliament. It's there in the ministerial code. It's a basic expectation of ministers. And your viewers are used to seeing sometimes politicians bend the truth, stretch the truth, answer different questions to the ones that are sometimes asked because the truth is inconvenient. We're not actually used to, in British politics, ministers standing at the dispatch box and just telling barefaced lies. It's one of the reasons why one of the rules of the House of Commons is that we can't call each other liars. There's an old-fashioned notion in the House of Commons, which some of your viewers might chuckle at, but there's an old-fashioned notion that MPs are honourable. And actually, I believe that most of my colleagues across the House of Commons, including Conservative MPs, are honourable people. And that's why what Boris Johnson's done is such an affront. And imagine if we let this precedent go. Imagine if we allow a situation where Prime Ministers can just tell barefaced lies without accountability. What kind of precedent does that set for the future? And how would your viewers feel if this was a Prime Minister, perhaps a different Prime Minister, one they didn't vote for or didn't support, behaving like this? Imagine if Jeremy Corbyn had been Prime Minister and lied like this. How would your viewers feel? So we've got to make sure we hold whoever is in charge to account for basic principles in public life.
You're making your point, and we understand what you're saying, but there'll be a lot of people, President Zelensky perhaps, who would argue Boris Johnson is an honourable person, that there are more important things to be discussing. We're out on the international stage, the Prime Minister's in India at the moment. We need to be focusing on governing the country, not going over and over and over the same thing. For many people, they think it's trivial.
Well, on this situation in Ukraine, I mean, there is so much support across the House of Commons for President Zelensky and the war effort he's waging against this appalling Russian invasion and the death and devastation he's inflicting. So even if there were a change of Prime Minister from Boris Johnson to another Conservative MP, the policy in Ukraine won't change, and it'd be one that Labour supported. And on the fundamental issues that are facing people here in Britain, particularly around things like the cost of living crisis, Boris Johnson can't be part of the solution because he's part of the problem. And it's not just on parties that Boris Johnson twists the truth. He stood up in the House of Commons this week and claimed that this is a government that's committed to low taxes. We've got the highest tax burden in Britain in 70 years, and Boris Johnson's increased taxes on working people. We've got a Chancellor that's raised those taxes, having spent years avoiding his own. We've got a Health Secretary that lectured working people on their moral duty to pay higher taxes when he spent years avoiding his own. So it's not just on parties where Boris Johnson twists the truth, it's on a whole range of issues. And Boris Johnson can't be the solution facing our country's problems because he's part of the problem himself.
Shadow Secretary, you put that very passionately, that whole belief that you have there. But equally as passionately, sitting to my left-hand side here, is our newspaper reviewer today, the broadcaster Liz Kershaw. and she's jumping up and down in her chair, and I want to know what she wants to relieve herself of in your direction. Camera 6, Elizabeth, over there. Right.
OK. Morning, Wes. I was presenting news and current affairs programmes on the day after 9/11 on the BBC and the day after the invasion of Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. And you said there's a time-old tradition of Prime Ministers not misleading Parliament. And you've also mentioned the war in Ukraine, which reminds me of Tony Blair telling Parliament that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, which he could have used to attack the UK within 30 minutes, was it? That was before the UN weapons inspectors had finished their task. And it turned out that Saddam had no such weapons or capability. Also, Lord Goldsmith advised Tony Blair that invading Iraq, as we weren't under imminent threat, was actually an illegal war, and was made to change his mind after a quick visit to Washington, and then came back and advised the Prime Minister it was legal, and his deputy resigned. Basically, what I'm saying is, why did Tony Blair never resign? Surely being responsible for the deaths of 4,000 British troops and 36,000 British casualties and up to a million Iraqi people is more of an offence to the public. And think of those anti-war demonstrations, the biggest ever at the time, than cake and fizz. Why don't you get real?
Yeah, and I was on some of those demonstrations too, but what I'd say in the case of Iraq is that Tony Blair was held to account. I actually think it was the issue that led to Tony Blair's downfall.
He didn't resign. He went through till Gordon Brown unseated him. He was held
to account and hauled through the Chilcot process afterwards. So I do think there was accountability in that case. And one of the things I do think, and let me say this as an opponent of the Iraq War, I think that Tony Blair and the people in the cabinet and the government at the time told people what they believed to be true and did not turn up to the House of Commons saying things that they knew to be lies at the time. There were things that they said were wrong.
True, that he wasn't doing anything wrong, having a bit of a celebration for his birthday.
But I don't think that's quite the same as Boris Johnson coming to the House of Commons and basically saying that there weren't events in Number 10 and then that there were, saying that he wasn't present but then he was, and fundamentally breaking the rules that he himself wrote and imposed on the country. And we've got to hold Prime Ministers to high standards and accountability. As I say, Tony Blair was held to account from Iraq. He was ultimately forced from office over the issue, and he was held to account even after he left office. One of the things that Parliament is trying to do today is to ensure accountability in the case of this Prime Minister, who has knowingly, willfully misled Parliament and lied to the voters, and there have got to be consequences for that, whoever the Prime Minister is and whatever the issue.
Wes Streeting, thank you very much indeed for talking to us today. Wes Streeting is the Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. What he's talking about is this big debate which is in the Commons today. It begins at 11:30. And so, you got a lot of praise from people last time around.
Getting praise now as well.
You're getting praise now as well. But,
I mean, how can you compare a Victoria sponge with some buttercream icing and a bottle of cheap plonk with the willful destruction and regime change in Iraq and the thousands of soldiers who are now, involved in Prince Harry's Invictus Games because they lost limbs, they were maimed, people lost their sons, and all because of dodgy dossiers.
Well, look, that is a good opportunity to segue into the Prince of Delusion, as the Times are calling him. We're joined, of course, also by the political editor, we should say, of the Sun and Sunday, not just Liz Kershaw, this morning. And you've chosen this story, David, because, of course, it is Her Majesty's birthday today, and yet here we are talking about one of her naughty boys once again.
Yes, 96th birthday for Mam, and Harry comes over to does an interview with NBC in which it's all about Harry, of course, and he's stolen a lot of the headlines on the front pages this morning. Asked about his father, he has nothing much to say. And asked about the Queen, his grandmother, he says that he's there to protect her, which is a little bit self-important and seen as a little bit patronising in a way. I mean, he's been living over in Montecino in California for the last 2 years.
Yeah, but is he saying, not just patronising and self-important, is he saying, because I know people who know people. I can get you the right people around you. You know the court that they have. To say that they don't have their own court, Meghan and Harry, in California, they're surrounded by advisors, and anyone who has ever interviewed any minor Netflix actor or actress, and they come to you, they come with an entourage. They come with a complete entourage, which just does their bidding. If they want to sit on a different chair, if they want their dressing room painted a different colour, and in my case, I've had someone who refused to sit on a couch. I've had someone else...
This because they were allergic to the threads?
Well, it's a long story. There's also an actor who arrived in who said he's an ambassador for the seas, therefore there can be no plastic in his dressing room. And stupidly, the researchers were trying to clear out his dressing room. I'd say, don't give him a dressing room then. See what he does then. Put him in the green room like everybody else.
What's funny about this, Eamonn, is that the Queen's been on the throne for 70 years. It's a Platinum Jubilee this year. She's quite capable of looking after herself. She's got people there. She's done it well enough for long enough. And poor old William can't look after himself. He's currently taking the Home Office through the courts, saying he needs better protection when he comes over here with his...
But David, you're right. He isn't capable of looking after himself because he needs people psychologically to reassure him. He needs people to do his bidding around him. People who, what are they called? People who just make things happen. Fixers. Fixers, and they are all around. So he probably is quite incapable of lots of things, but it's also endemic in the acting profession as well, of which he's well associated there with. Plus, he needs a deal with Netflix to come good. And
but on the plus side, it is Her Majesty's birthday, and how are they commemorating this special day, Liz, with the release of a
Barbie? Got Madge Barbie.
I wanted to get one of these for my 4-year-old daughter.
I don't know if we can see this or not, but this is a special. What you see down here. Sorry, where am I? There. That is a Barbie doll.
But the price tag pretty much matches Her Majesty's age.
It's based on Helen Mirren playing the Queen. It's got a very long, slender, wrinkle-free neck, but you recognise the gown. Yeah. But it's for a queenly £94.99. It's not for kids to play with, is it? It's one of these things that collectors buy, and then when they sell them, they find they've lost. Gets worth about 10% of what they... But I wish her a really happy birthday today,
She deserves it.
She does. David, let's talk about Twitter. It doth protest too much about the Bard. This is in the Times, page 17.
To be or not to be, or to tweet or not to tweet, as it may seem. A professor from Nottingham University got into trouble with Twitter. He was sanctioned and had his account suspended because he quoted from Shakespeare. Of course, under the rules, you're not allowed to say anything that's offensive or filled with hate or inciting
Well, they obviously
violence.
don't look at our Twitter accounts.
Not our accounts, but
Well, look at the replies I get sometimes. But he quoted from Henry VI, in which... the full quote spoken by Dick the Butcher in Act 4, Scene 2 of the 1591 play. He says, the first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. So in promoting a production of this play, he jokingly put that quote in and was promptly sanctioned. So I think they need to be sent on an English literature course, the Twitterati.
OK. Quarantine Hotel says, again, we stay in the Times. This is page 25.
Yeah.
What have you got to tell us about them?
Well, I was saying earlier about things that actually do outrage me because they've been cock-ups, if that's a GB news word I can use. But do you remember people were being put into hotels complaining about how much they had to pay, £1,500, £2,500, giving lukewarm food and actually catching COVID in hotels because of the air conditioning, etc. Well, there's an investigation now, and we'll have to wait for the outcome, it's another one, of whether the £400 million that it cost... £400 million that these quarantine schemes cost the taxpayer actually prevented any transmission, spread of coronavirus at all. So that'll be interesting when it comes out. Overall, border measures cost £486 million, but the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee has said they added up to a confusing mismatch. I know a couple who've just been in a quarantine hotel in Barbados. They've chucked off the Queen Mary. Negative when they got on. 4 days tested positive, so caught it on the ship. duty of care, I would have thought, from Cunard, but no. Cunard dumped them and a group of 40 passengers on the dockside, and they were then taken in by the Beijing authorities and locked up for 10 days without being able to go out at all.
I have to say, I'm amazed anyone ever goes on a cruise, just because all I hear about is norovirus, COVID. Everyone catches everything on those giant...
Wish me luck. I'm going on one soon.
Oh, have you ever been on one before?
Oh, loads of
Ever
times.
been ill? Caught anything?
I went on one in...
They do seem like they're sort of Petri dishes.
I went on one in December. It was the best cruise I've ever been on. They were only allowed to have it like half full. You had to wear masks when you were walking round, sanitise everywhere.
Sounds like a lovely holiday.
It was great. I had a great time.
No, I agree with you, Liz.
Yeah.
I think they're super. I can never find anybody to go with me, though.
I'll go, because I always have to scrape round.
You guys, match made in heaven.
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
that, thanks.
I'm going in a single cabin, and of course that costs twice as much, doesn't it?
Oh, well, you guys could share. No.
I'll make friends on board.
You'll not be single for long.
I won't.
in there.
Hello.
Which brings me, David, to the love hormone, which is called oxytocin.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it.
So tell us about oxytocin. This is page 23 in the Mail today.
Well, you get more oxytocin flushing through your veins as you get older, which is a reason why older people are more generous. Now, there's this study at a university in California in which they showed heart-rending appeals, video appeals to people aged 18 to 64 or 99 or something like that. And they then asked them to give some of their money away to help. And it was the older people who dug deep. And the reason they also looked at the levels of oxytocin in their bloodstream. This is a hormone which helps mothers bond with their babies when they're born, and apparently it grows as you get older in your body, and that is why older people are more generous, which explains why I get loads of charities calling me up every minute of the day because they think I'm going to give them loads of money.
And if you're watching, Talking Pictures, then all that you think, I'm of a certain demographic, obviously, because it's all for walking baths or stair lifts or all things like donkey sanctuaries. And I always get a tear in my eye, or the Dogs Trust.
Talking about Talking Pictures, there's going to be George Michael the movie.
Ooh, who's playing him?
Well, it's going to be released this summer. And it's called Freedom Uncut. So it's going to be a documentary. So calling it a movie is a bit stretched there.
Lights, camera, action. See what they did there.
Yeah. So there'll be a big audience for that, I would have thought.
Liz, let's talk about this. So we can't talk about the love hormone and all of this without touching on this. This is Kiss Me Quick, a snog as good as brushing teeth, according to The Sun.
Yeah, because it releases when you're slobbering all over each other. Tickling tongues, it releases loads and loads of saliva, and that works on all the bits and bacteria and gunge between your teeth, and it's in a good way. It's cleansing. It's like putting your teeth through a car wash.
How can that possibly
It's not an alternative
for your teeth? Who's done this research?
Right. Okay. In small print, it says it's not an alternative to brushing your teeth. You should still brush and floss, but you should also try and snog for at least 4 minutes a day.
4 minutes.
Yeah. I don't think you have to.
Ruth, listen. I was told by the doctor and the dentist that I've got to do this for at least 4 minutes a day.
As long as you brush your teeth and floss before, she can't complain. What a treat. What a treat.
I didn't say her. I said it said 4 minutes you've got to snog. It didn't say snog with her.
Oh, right.
But you're right. I suppose that would keep it all
You're supposed to brush for
orthodontist,
so that's a 6-minute routine every
it takes a lot of time
for that.
Dr. Khaled Kasim said people should kiss for 4 minutes on top of brushing and flossing.
I imagine it's good for your, double chin as well. Get the muscles working. There's got to be lots of benefits to prolonged snogging. Anyway.
It does warn that if somebody has obvious tooth decay and gum disease, it counteract the benefits, so don't go there.
Into it.
They will.
Well,
so
let's end
anyway,
on that note, shall we?
These two will be back to Kisses Quick again in about 40 minutes' time. Thank you very much indeed. David Wooding, political editor, Sun on Sunday, and Liz Kershaw, who just takes politicians to task. I think what will have gone down quite well is a question that I think a lot of interviewers like to put to politicians, or would like and don't, which is when you said to Wes Streeting, and it could have been any politician, get real.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, before he talked to me and he was talking to you, he was trotting out this, which has now become received wisdom, that the majority of the population are outraged by Partygate. The majority of the population...
But there are polls to back that up.
Well, OK... Well, I did my poll yesterday, non-scientific, on Twitter, which said that people were more outraged by beer and pizza, you know, with Keir Starmer.
But then is that not just being party political? What they think is...
No, it's all on party political lines, isn't it, this? As I said, it's the way of the opposition getting rid of the Tories because Boris is a winning ticket, and if they can get rid of him and get somebody rubbish as leader of the Tory party.
So that's Liz's theory.
Stephen Kay says Liz Kershaw's missing the point. She's hell-bent on reducing the Partygate issue to cake and fizz and seems OK with the fact our PM's lied over and over again. He and his cronies broke the law again and again, but that's OK with you, Liz?
No.
Jimmy in Warrington.
It's not as important as a lot of other stuff that went on. It's not as important as the fact that, I'm repeating myself, but I'm hearing stories all the time about how people suffered during the lockdowns. It's not as important as the fact that my mother, with 5 chronic illnesses, was chucked out of hospital, never saw a doctor and died 2 weeks later in a care home. I couldn't see it. She was neglected. We couldn't have a funeral. But I think the whole Partygate thing, have a go about that, not parties.
Well, look, Liz has had a go, and you've heard what she's had to say throughout the programme this morning. If you want to have a go, you can... tweet us if I can find what camera I'm on. In days of old, in TV studios, they used to have things called lights.
A big red light.
And the lights would go on, and you would know exactly what camera there is. And I've got my producer saying, shut up, throw to the weather. Here it comes.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Wary.
The Prime Minister arrives in India as he attempts to deepen economic and defence ties with the country.
Good morning. It is coming up to 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 21st of April. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading our show this morning, this is what we've got. The Prime Minister has landed in India for a 2-day trade trip intended to strengthen ties. He has hinted that Britain could let in more skilled migrants from India in return for a post-Brexit trade deal.
The Queen is celebrating her 96th birthday today at a cottage in Sandringham, where Prince Philip spent much of his retirement.
Russia has test-launched a nuclear-capable missile, with Vladimir Putin boasting it will give his country's enemies food for thought. It comes as a Chechen warlord loyal to Putin claims that the Ukrainian city of Mariupol will fall by lunchtime.
And Julian Assange's US extradition order has been sent to the Home Secretary for a final decision. Priti Patel will now decide if the United States' request meets the legal criteria, including a promise not to kill the WikiLeaks founder.
We're going to be talking to the Shadow Education Secretary, Nadim Zahawi.
No, he's not the Shadow, is he? He is the Education
No, he's absolutely
Secretary.
not. Absolutely
He's
right.
in the government.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, we're talking about him, about what sounds like a complete waste of time.
I think it's great.
What? A new environmental GC rather than how to get
Natural
a mortgage
history.
and compound interest or whatever. So here's an environmental GC. That's an
Here we
easy
go.
one.
Here we
That's
go.
an easy one. I'll do the environmental one, the GCE. That's guaranteed.
Let us know your views. gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can get in touch on Twitter at gbnews. OK, to our top story this hour. The Prime Minister's arrived in India for a trip aimed at strengthening economic and defence ties with the country.
OK, he arrived there this morning for a 48-hour visit. This is part of his aim, as we were explaining there, for a post-Brexit trade deal, and he told he will hold one-on-one meetings with the Prime Minister there, Narendra Modi, with new announcements on trade and security amongst those expected.
The government has hinted that rules on skilled workers from India coming to the UK could be relaxed if it meant a deal could be struck by the end of the year. Let's get more on all of this from our political correspondent Tom Harwood, joins us in the studio. It really sounds as if this deal is almost done, Tom.
Well, it could well be, and this is a world away from where people thought we may well have been at this time last year. There was lots of commentary about how the twain shall never meet, about how our economies are too far apart, about how the Indians want provisions on migration and the UK wants provisions on liberalisation of many sectors. But it looks like things are coming closer together, not least because there's a personal relationship between the Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson and Narendra Modi. Modi, of course, came to the UK over the summer. He was down in Cornwall for the G7 summit. He was invited personally by the Prime Minister, expanding the G7 there, which is normally just the sort of largest developed economies. Well, they included also some of the biggest democracy economies in the world, sort of expanding the G7 into something that some people call the D10, trying to create that alliance of democracies around the world at a time when Russia and China are being more and more assertive and potentially aggressive too. So, yes, it looks like this trade deal may well be kicking off. We're not expecting anything to be signed over the next couple of days, but certainly some more progress on that, and potentially something coming to a conclusion by the end of the year, which no one expected, but also in this visit, security.
Yeah, and interesting, you mentioned Russia and Chinese aggression there, and the Prime Minister keen to try and get Russia to come closer into the Western alliance in response to President Putin, because at the moment they've been sort of courting the best of all options for them.
They have, and indeed they have abstained on several motions in the UN. So not taking the Russian side, but also not explicitly condemning Vladimir Putin for his acts of aggression. So really what it comes to is trying to offer the Indians another way, because currently India gets a lot of its energy from Russia. It buys a lot of military equipment from Russia. They have close economic ties stretching back decades. What the UK will be trying to do is offer India another way, potentially other sources of energy, boosting renewables and everything like that to try and help what is one of the largest countries in the world, the second largest by population.
OK, and we heard from Wes Streeting in the last half an hour on the programme explaining why he wants his MPs and his party to vote for this inquiry into the Prime Minister. Is that likely to be successful, do you think, today?
Do you know what? It has been so difficult to follow this. I was talking to MPs in the House of Commons all throughout yesterday, and at various points of the day, it seemed like the government was on the back foot and then back on the front foot again, and the Labour Party has tried to make this motion absolutely watertight. Let's remember this motion was granted by the Speaker on Tuesday. We saw the wording of the motion finally yesterday, and it is being voted on just after midday today. What the Labour Party has done in terms of what this motion is trying to achieve is it's going to refer the Prime Minister to a very important committee within the House of Commons, the Procedure Committee, which has a lot of powers of investigation. Now, in order to try and make this motion watertight, the chair of that committee, a Labour MP called Chris Bryant, a fervent critic of Boris Johnson, has recused himself from being chair of that committee were this investigation to go ahead. So really trying to coax Conservative MPs into this. What the Tory party is saying, however, is they're putting down an amendment to this motion, suggesting that none of this should happen until the Met Police has concluded their investigation and indeed until Sue Gray's investigation has concluded as well. Because, of course, this would be a third investigation.
At taxpayers' expense.
The Met Police is already investigating, as we have heard, to great length, and indeed Sue Gray has investigated. I think to some extent people will be wondering, does Parliament need to go through all of this as well? Although this is specifically in relation to whether or not the Prime Minister misled the House. The argument from the government is that this isn't the time to do it. The MPs need all the facts in front of them, and so they want MPs to wait until after those investigations are concluded. To some extent, some might say, kicking the can down the road.
OK, Tom, thanks very much indeed.
So here we are on this Thursday morning, the Queen spending and celebrating her 96th birthday, and she's spending it at Sandringham, where her husband, Prince Philip, spent much of his retirement. Well,
Our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, has been looking into Her Majesty's legacy.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
Her Majesty the Queen, speaking in 2015 when she overtook her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria as Britain's longest reigning monarch. This year, we celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne. Chooping the colour is a large part of June's celebrations and has marked the official birthday of the British sovereign for more than 2 centuries. But today, we celebrate the Queen's actual birthday. 96 years ago, the then Princess Elizabeth was born, not in a palace, but in a townhouse. She wasn't expected to be Queen, but her uncle, King Edward VIII's sudden abdication to marry an American divorcee propelled Elizabeth up the line of succession.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
Even on her birthday, Her Majesty continues with duties and works through her daily red box of government papers. 14 British Prime Ministers have served her, as well as 15 Australian and 12 Canadians. She has advised and guided each of them through troubled times, while always knowing when to lighten the mood.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
This week, it reveals the Queen's corgis were an absolute joy for her during the coronavirus pandemic. Her Majesty's personal advisor, Angela Kelly, reveals in a new chapter of her book that the Queen often took her dogs on long walks and were a great comfort when her late husband, Prince Philip, was in hospital. Her Majesty's 2 corgi puppies, Mick and Sandy, were a present from the Queen's son, Prince Andrew, and his daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. It's unknown what birthday presents are on offer this year, but Her Majesty is expected to mark the day privately.
That was Cameron looking back. He's now going to look forward as he joins us from outside Buckingham Palace. Cameron, good morning to you on this. Hopefully it'll be a very special day.
Good morning. It certainly is, Eamonn. Well, in my piece there, you heard Her Majesty say that she devoted her life to service. That was in a speech she made on her 21st birthday in April 1947. 75 years later, today, she turns 96, and she still had the strength to travel from Windsor Castle to Sandringham yesterday via helicopter. That's over 100 miles. We think she's staying at Wood Farm. That's the place she spent many happy times with her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. He spent a vast majority of his retirement there. It was a place that they could truly relax. It's a very small cottage and they have very limited staff there. And I think the picture that was released yesterday to mark Her Majesty's birthday is yet another tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh. Her Majesty was wearing Edinburgh green, that is the colours of the Duke of Edinburgh. The photo featured 2 fell ponies, and it was taken in March at Windsor Castle, and the Royal Windsor Horse Show commissioned this particular photograph, and those 2 ponies featuring in the image are going to be featuring in the Gallop Through History, which is a big show with 500 horses for Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee. But today we're expecting a few gun salutes, a 41 gun salutes by the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery at Hyde Park. The Band of the Scots Guards will also be performing Happy Birthday there. And at the Tower of London, the Honourable Artillery Company are going to be firing a 61 gun salute. But as for Her Majesty, we expect her to be marking the day privately today at her Sandringham estate, and no doubt she'll be visited by family and friends over the coming days.
Cameron, thank you very much indeed. And Buckingham Palace looking splendid in the sunshine.
Looking splendid, joined now by the royal author and the author of the new book, which is doing magnificent business, Queen of Our Times, the Daily Mail's Robert Hardman. Robert, very good to see you. The song, the anthem goes Born to Reign Over Us, but she wasn't.
No, she wasn't. She, rather like her father and indeed her grandfather before her, she was not born to reign over. She was expected to lead a modest life on the royal periphery, and her uncle, Edward VIII, and the family he never had, they were expected to take over. And instead we've had this record-breaking reign. She's broken almost every single royal reigning record there is. There's one left. No doubt she'll break it. In 2024, she'll overtake Louis XIV of France to be the all-time longest reigning monarch.
Wow.
He started as a boy king, so he had a head start.
Okay.
She was 25.
Do you think the fact that she wasn't actually born to be queen has affected how she has been queen?
It's a very interesting question. I mean, I think it probably has. I mean, I think when you're in your formative years, you expect somebody else to sort of take this on. You're aware that you're royal, but you haven't got this sort of burden looming. And it did weigh heavily on her mind after the abdication. It suddenly dawned, hang on, all this is coming my way. But I think George VI, her father, did a very good job, and her mother, of course, of training her, really. I mean, she did once say, she believes in, she says a lot in life is down to training. She says, I hope I was trained well.
Robert, the Queen got a helicopter to Sandringham yesterday. She clearly wants to feel close to her late husband on her birthday today. Do you think it will be a happy day for her, or do you think it will be tinged with sadness?
I think any trip to Wood Farm at Sandringham, where she is now, I mean, obviously that brings back memories, but she's very practical, she's very stoical. She's absolutely not like Queen Victoria. She's not one for sort of dwelling on misfortune. I think she'll find it just very nice change of scene. I mean, she's been at Windsor now for quite a long time. But yes, I mean, of course, Prince Philip will be on her mind. But her birthday is, don't forget, she's the only person in the world with 2 birthdays. So this is just sort of round one. I mean, the really big one comes at the start of the Jubilee celebrations, her official birthday.
Why is there such a thing as an official birthday? Why is that?
Well, we don't, 2 reasons really. One is we don't have a British National Day. Most countries have an Independence Day, whatever you want to call it. We don't, and around the world, British embassies and high commissions everywhere, they treat the Queen's official birthday as our sort of national day. So that's the day there will be sort of celebrations abroad.
No, I didn't know that.
But also it's because it's the day of the birthday parade, otherwise known as Trooping the Colour. And it was decided many years ago that that you really wanted this event to happen in summer when the weather's better.
Yes.
So it was decided that the monarch should have an official birthday. When you've got a monarch with a sort of birthday on a wet day in January, it's not much fun getting everyone out to troop the colour. So,
well, fingers crossed then they get good weather in June. No pressure with this special extra bank holiday weekend. Look, talk to us about this picture Buckingham Palace have released of Her Majesty the Queen. This was taken last month beside 2 very fluffy-looking fell ponies. You'd almost expect them to have horns on, and they could be unicorns. They look so sort of ethereal. Nice picture?
There's a lovely picture, I think. They've been very well turned out. Someone's obviously they've had a lot of grooming before that photo, but she loves her fell ponies. One of her happiest moments at her 90th birthday was when the Fell Pony Society did a ride past, and there was hundreds of fell ponies came through the park. And until very recently, she was riding her own fell pony, Emma, and she loves breeding them and showing them. And I think this is a nod. In fact, this is definitely a nod to an event that's coming up very shortly, which is one of her absolute favourites. It's the Royal Windsor Horse Show. It's an event she's been going to since she was a little girl. It's where she won her very first prize as a little girl. Yeah. And it's not a sort of big grand event like the Derby, which we've also got coming up. It's very much sort of home event in the home park. Yeah. And both those horses in that picture will be taking part in that, and she loves it.
You have in the past described the Queen as a very executive monarch. What do you make then of this Prince Harry revelation that he went to see her last week, and one of the reasons was to make sure she was surrounded by the right people?
Yeah, I mean, Prince Harry came over to promote his Invictus Games, which have been a great triumph, and I think one of it probably his greatest achievement. And then just completely draws the attention away from the games by coming out with some of these extraordinary remarks. I mean, I think it's safe to say that after 70 years on the throne, the Queen's pretty good at choosing people to protect her. So we'll see at her birthday parade, she has the Brigade of Guards to protect her. And she has 60 million subjects who are very keen to protect her. So it was a strange thing to go on, but they were very odd remarks. I thought the strangest one was this idea that he's got to worry about burnout because of his mantra that he has to make the world a better place for his kids. I think a lot of people would have thought, well, I'm just sort of trying to get my kids to school, feed them, that sort of thing. I just think it shows elements of the sort of monarchy being detached, being remote, being completely separate from other people's concerns, and that's not really what monarchy is about.
All of that being said, though, Her Majesty clearly does adore Prince Harry. What do you think her birthday wish will be today for her family?
I think, like all matriarchs at the head of a great family, a big extended family, she'll want everybody to get along. I mean, that would be, I'm sure, her primary wish. I mean, as you say, she loves Harry. They have a great relationship. That hasn't been affected by recent, by the whole Brexit saga. On an institutional level, he's decided he wants out of the royal family, and that comes with certain conditions. But as a grandmother to grandson relationship, it's as warm as ever, and no, they do. It's charming. It's just a pity that we're dwelling on other aspects and security and God knows what.
Well, Robert, we've got to leave it there. Thank you. That's royal biographer Robert Hardman. His book, Queen of Our Times, is out now and well worth a read.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks. We'll take a break there, and coming up we're discussing the extradition of Julian Assange and what could happen to him if he is made to go back to America. That's after the weather.
Hello, good morning. I'm Luke Mile with your weather forecasts, and this Thursday morning's going to be a bit of a chilly one out there first thing. Temperatures have fallen away overnight, but through the day we'll see plenty of warm sunshine away from those eastern coasts. Now, we will start to see an easterly wind feeding in over the next few days with the high pressure to the north and lower pressure down towards the southwest. It does mean that things will turn a bit cooler along those eastern coasts, and already we're starting to see that through this morning with this low cloud here drifting onto the coasts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. But by and large, most places will see a fine and fair day, lots of sunshine around across the UK. A little bit more cloud developing though for England and Wales through the afternoon, turning that sunshine a little bit hazier through the afternoon. But where we do see the sunshine, those temperatures getting up to 18 degrees, that's 64 in Fahrenheit. Now, through Thursday afternoon and evening, we'll see plenty of sunshine to end the day. A lot of this cloud will melt away, so for many, a fair end to the day. But overnight, we start to see that easterly wind turning a bit stronger, drifting in this low cloud and mist and haar, so it will turn a bit grey and a bit murky, I think, for some places, particularly in the east as we go to the small hours of Friday. Some clear skies, though, but with more wind and a bit more cloud in general, temperatures won't be as low as what they were on Thursday morning. And that cloud could be thick enough at times through Friday morning to give a few spits and spots of rain across southern areas. Nothing particularly heavy, but at times there will be a little bit more cloud and rain here. But the best of sunshine will be further north, particularly northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northwest England. We'll see some fair weather here through the day. Temperatures still not doing too bad where we've got the sunshine, but with the cloud and with the cooler wind, it will feel quite chilly along those North Sea coasts and under any of this thicker cloud. And that's the trend really as we go through the next few days. Those temperatures sliding down somewhat, and there will be a few showers at times, particularly for more southern areas. Of course, I'll be back later with an update for you. Take care.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very nice to see you on this Thursday morning. It is Eamonn and Isabel here at breakfast time on GB News. We thank you for your company. We thank you for your support, which has grown our audience absolutely tremendously. Absolutely. We welcome you if you're a new viewer or a new listener to this programme, and thank you very much indeed for all your support. Remember, there are those Television Radio Industry Club Awards. You go to their website, the Trick website, and you can nominate this breakfast programme, or as such, us as individuals, for nominations for the shortlist for the Trick Awards, which are going to be held in July, I think, this year. So thanks if you do that for us.
Still to come on this morning's programme, we're celebrating the Queen's 96th birthday today. We'll be speaking to the former minister turned author, royal author, Norman Baker. He'll be sharing some of his stories about Her Majesty when he joins us just after 9 o'clock.
Yeah, also the shocking photograph which went viral right across the whole world. It will have touched so many of you, this Ukrainian child, and what is written on her back there are her family's contact details. And we're going to be speaking to her mum, who felt forced to do that as that child now finds safety in France. Both of them now together there in France, which is good news.
Let us know your thoughts this morning. What do you think of the subjects we're talking about? We've got the Education Secretary coming up as well. Send us your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
Now, a British court yesterday approved the extradition of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to America, where he's wanted for his involvement in leaking classified documents
2010 and 2011.
Yeah, the decision to extradite will ultimately fall now to the Home Secretary, who will have the final say in all of this. Let's go to RGB News reporter Rosie Wright, who's outside Belmarsh Prison, where Assange is currently being held. And Rosie, yesterday, a very brief hearing in the Magistrates' Court where Assange appeared via video link from where you are today.
Yes, brief is exactly the word used by Julian Assange's barrister, who said it was brief but significant. What happened yesterday was that formal acknowledgement, the extradition to the US. It's partly in place, really, a rubber stamping exercise, because Julian Assange's legal team in February of this year applied to the Supreme Court to say, no, you've got to stop this. They lost that battle. So yesterday was in practice just formalising what had already happened. Julian Assange has said the whole time, this is politically motivated. What we were trying to do is expose US wrongdoing. There's a public interest in this. And what's very clear is that although this sounds like one step closer to him being extradited, there are still many routes available ahead to him and his legal team.
This case rolls on, I suppose. He isn't without his supporters.
No, well, the first thing that his legal team are going to try and do is persuade Priti Patel, because the decision now lands with her to decide whether that should be formally approved or not. There are other legal channels that his team might be looking at. He's got 2 young children. He's recently got married. They've raised real concerns over Julian Assange's mental health, his physical well-being, and they're also saying what kind of conditions would he be kept in when he went to the US? What kind of trial would he receive? What kind of sentence he could be facing up to? Of course, he wouldn't live this long, but 175 years in jail. You mentioned the supporters, though, Isabel, and yesterday at that very brief court hearing, they could be heard inside the courtroom in Westminster, and also here at the prison where he's currently residing. We can see lots of posters and banners and lots of ribbons like this. Obviously, evidence of supporters being here. He's also got high-profile celebrity supporters as well. Vivienne Westwood, who used to go and meet him when he was holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy. Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party, was outside court yesterday saying, we will keep campaigning over this. And Julian Assange really splits people. People either think he's sort of this hero championing freedom of speech and journalism, and these other people who say he's potentially a narcissist. He's seeking the limelight, and for what ends? What we know is that they have gone to extraordinary measures up until this point to stop him being extradited, and the legal team say they've got fresh things that they want to discuss, and they're going to keep fighting this.
Good stuff, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you. And we were talking about what sort of man is he, and no one will know that better than Gabriel Shipton. Gabriel Shipton is Julian Assange's brother, and he joins us live now, I'm delighted to say, from Australia. Mr. Shipton, good morning to you, or evening, I'm sure it is with you.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah. Well, you heard the question there. What sort of man is your brother? Who is he? What are his motives? What is his intention? How would you describe your brother?
Well, Julian's my older brother, so I'm in this strange position where I've been advocating my older brother, which is a bit reversed. Usually, brothers are the younger brothers. But to me, he's a gentle genius. He's somebody who believes in justice, believes in fighting injustice. Very high moral standards. He's a great father. He's been the best father he can be from the position that he's in. He's very special to me.
Genius is a beautiful description. But Gabriel, if you could turn back time, do you wish things could be different? I mean, do you agree, or did you agree with what he did? And if you could turn back time, what would be different?
Well, the fight gives all his work meaning. If he wasn't confronting the powerful, or his work, wasn't really doing anything, he wouldn't be in this situation. So, in terms of would Julian do anything differently? I would say not. This sort of the persecution of him is an affirmation of his work. really, that what he's done has upset some very, very powerful people. They are now so scared of what Julian created that they are willing to, lock him in the UK's worst prison for 3 years with no sentence while this extradition hearing lives on forever and ever.
Do you have any indication of what will happen, or what do you think will happen to your brother?
Well, his legal avenues are getting less and less now. It's obviously gone to Priti Patel now. It's on Priti Patel's desk waiting for her signature. We have until May 18th to make representations to Priti Patel. The opportune moment now to make representations, because it is no longer before the UK courts. There's no longer a legal proceeding in the UK. So this case has become entirely political. And so people like supporters like David Davis, UK MP, who believes this is an overreach, an extraterritorial overreach by the US DOJ. He will be making representations at this time, saying that you can't do this. You can't apply US laws like this to UK citizens.
Gabriel, just finally, you heard our reporter talking about concerns over Julian's physicality, his mental health, his physical ability. From what you know, how would you describe the condition he is in during this wait?
He's been in the situation now, detained in one way or another in the UK for over 11 years. They've been crushing him, that's been wearing him down, and this extradition is getting closer and closer. So this weight hanging over him is crushing him more and more, even at this times. It's heartbreaking for me to see what's been happening to Julian over these years, and we really live in fear that he will not make it through this process. That that he could die in prison.
Hope your fears are incorrect, but Gabriel Shipton, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it, and we will all know the fate of your brother later today. That's Gabriel Shipton, Julian Assange's brother, live from Australia there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, stay with us. In a moment, we'll be taking you through the newspapers today with David Wooding and Liz Kershaw, who a lot of you have enjoyed this morning. See you in a sec.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, the headlines at 8:34. Let's bring you up to date. The Prime Minister has landed overnight in India for talks with his counterpart Narendra Modi about a potential trade deal between the UK and India. Boris Johnson has hinted that the post-Brexit deal will include accepting Delhi's demands for an increase in migration to the UK. Boris Johnson has said that trying to deal with President Putin is like a crocodile having your leg in its jaws, hinting that any prospective talks between Russia and the West could be doomed to fail. The Children's Commissioner says England should think about banning the smacking of children like Scotland and Wales have. Dame Rachel de Souza has showed her support for altering the law to ensure children and adults share the same protection from assault. And to celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday today, a new photo has been released by Buckingham Palace. Taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle in front of a beautiful magnolia tree, Her Majesty was pictured with two of her favourite fell ponies. The monarch is today celebrating her birthday in Sandringham, staying at a much-loved cottage of her beloved late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. COVID restrictions on international travel were imposed by different government departments in England without assessment of their impact as a whole. That's according to the National Audit Office. It found there was no system to measure the overall success of rules like the traffic light system, self-isolation and testing. That's despite the government spending £486 million on them. More than 25,000 staff across Britain's railways have been trained to help prevent suicide. A fifth of rail workers are now equipped with the skills to identify vulnerable people and to start a conversation to get them to safety. The former Culture Secretary John Whittingdale says he expects to see the end of the BBC licence fee in our lifetime. However, the Conservative MP does not think it will be possible to axe the charge in time for the next licence fee settlement in 2027. OK, we're going to take one last look through the papers this morning. We're joined by David Wooding and Liz Kershaw again. And David, you want to choose Her Majesty's birthday today.
Yes.
Big milestone for her.
Dominating the front pages.
Yeah.
Big year, Jubilee year, plus 70 years on the throne, 96 years of age today. That picture of her, even The Guardian have stuck it on page one. They seem to think the story is that she's spending the holiday in the cottage where Prince Philip spent most of his retirement. Others have gone with the fact that Prince Harry is
Not to be confused,
is stealing the limelight with that interview he's given, saying how he wants to protect the Queen and refusing to answer questions about his relationship with his father, which seems to have taken a bit of the shine off what should be a happy and joyful day for everyone.
Do you think it was ever going to be a happy day, though, if the Queen is in, Wood Farm, which is, traditionally Prince Philip's favourite place to be? Do you think there'll be a bit tinged with sadness today, irrespective of all the Harry dramas that are always circling?
Well, I think she's had a belly full of sadness and anxiety over the last 12 months with a lifelong husband, well, since she was 21, dying, and Prince Harry's antics and the Prince Andrew debacle. I just hope she has a peaceful day, take her mind off things. Maybe have some Prosecco and cake.
Let's not bring that up again. I'm going to try and get through a whole paper review.
I know the story.
She'll have to resign.
I know the story. I saw the picture and you were talking earlier about Shakespeare and getting you in trouble on Twitter, and I was about to say, a horse, a kingdom for my horse. But I thought,
don't do it. Liz, let's talk about the French elections. Of course, this is happening on Sunday, and it's getting down to the wire now, and Putin really trying to expose Le Pen as being...
Macron
trying to expose Le Pen as being in bed with Putin.
Well, not literally, not absolutely, but on that, Marine Le Pen borrowed £100,000 from Russia because it's a minor party, it's a poor party, and she says it's only because she was blocked by Macron as finance minister. He interfered and stopped all French banks from lending her money, so that's the defence. And she says, like any loan, she's paying it back. And he was sitting there saying, yes, I've got loans as well. And I thought, yeah, right, anyway. I just think... I don't know why it's not getting more prominence, because remember the US election relentlessly plastered all over our TVs, and this is as important in a way because it's on our doorstep. France is part of the axis of power with Germany. It really matters who becomes the president on Sunday, especially in times of war, fuel shortages and all the rest of it. There is, by the way, a Reuters report that the only reason that Germany's holding off blocking oil and gas from Russia is so it doesn't torpedo Macron's ability to win the election, and as soon as he's back in power, Macron, then oil and gas will be blocked and oil prices will go up to like $170 a barrel. But last night's debate, I could only watch an hour of it because I had to go to bed because of this. But I did manage to see a lot, and what was interesting is the issues are all the same as ours. We tend to think that we're, perhaps especially hard done by or targeted by things, but last night it was about food prices, food shortages. People say, that they couldn't afford to put diesel in their tank to go to work. It's about young people not being able to get on the property ladder, getting jobs, people feeling ignored and forgotten. It's the same issues.
But what is clear, I suppose, is that whatever the outcome of that election, and I think we're expecting an exit poll around 10 p.m, which we'll be covering here on GB News and on Monday morning as well, of course, the fallout, is we are likely to see a bit of a shift in foreign policy next week because the election's done and dusted, and we might see a different response to Russia, whoever happens to be in the Elysee Palace.
Yes, and there's quite a big implication in the geopolitical front on this. I mean, Europe, where you've got a right-wing president re-elected leader in Hungary, you've got that sort of green lefty coalition in Germany. What does it mean for the future of the EU is question one. Which direction does the European Union go, which is important to Britain? The other interesting thing is migrants in this country. Now, Marine Le Pen went to the Calais region and was saying she would crack down on those migrants. And I think there might be some breakthrough for the Home Office, Priti Patel, and the general public here who want that boat crisis dealing with. Even if Macron wins, having won the election, some people feel he's using that as a stick to beat the UK with to show he's powerful and standing up to us. So he may then be a bit more emollient and start doing some kind of
Who do you think's going to win? I'm going to make you put your
I think Macron will win at the end of the day. I mean, it's very similar to the UK election with Jeremy Corbyn, only in this case Marine Le Pen being on the right extreme. Right. The young people are going for her in the same way that a lot of young people went for Jeremy Corbyn. I don't. The voters will swing it.
Sorry, David. I don't see why she's labelled. Having watched last night, I don't see why she's labelled right wing, because her policies on pensions, on income tax, on VAT, it's all very socialist. So I don't get that. I'm going to go home and read her manifesto in full to see what she really stands for.
OK. David, let's talk about hot desking, shall we? Something that I hate it personally. I don't know about you. The Telegraph talking about this, page 12. Commons worker wins hot desking claim. I mean, it's a pain, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the big thing when you go hot desking is, first of all, your seat is not adjusted in the right way. It's too far back or it's too far low down. Then the keyboard's dirty. There's cups of tea and stains everywhere. You can't put your picture of your family or your football team on the wall. And this is happening in the House of Commons where I work. There are 0.8 desks per person in the House of Commons. And so when you're not at your desk, you have to be hot desk. Imagine, I've gone in to cover a debate PMQs and I went back again and there's two people sitting at the two desks available in my office. What do I do? And this woman in particular has won an unfair dismissal claim or a compensation to be decided because she had suffered an injury after a fall and she had a chair in a specific setting and a particular chair. And of course, every time she went back to a desk, the chair was missing or there was another chair there. And she has said she wanted her own desk and was told, no, you can't have one. We have a hot desking policy. So this is justice for the anti-hot desking brigade.
It's all the germs as well, because I've seen these documentaries where they've swabbed a keypad and somebody's been sitting there before you and they've been eating a sandwich and then they've licked their fingers and then they've gone like... And, Anyway, I'm hot seating. Yeah. I don't know what's happened to Eamonn, but I'm sitting in his seat.
What's great is that we all have our own laptops. Although we have to sit at different desks, we have our own germs carried around with us. So I suppose that's one upside of it. But I hate it. But I can understand why we have to do it. Shall we talk about Netflix crackdown, Liz? This you've chosen from The Sun, and this is the war on those shared logins because they've had this awful first quarter, haven't they? Is this in response to that, or?
No, I think it's that generally they've woken up to the fact that whilst they've grown exponentially over the last few years, and especially during the pandemic when everybody was people were shut up in the house, furloughed with box sets and takeaways, they're actually borrowing each other's passwords, and you can do that. I can't reveal how I know that, but you can have somebody who lives, tens of miles away, and they say, "Oh, just borrow my password." And I've always thought that was a bit dodgy.
But it's limited, isn't it? You can, I couldn't know.
We can't speak from first-hand experience.
But you could only have 2 registered email addresses or something like that, I believe. But they're clamping down on it, and I suppose it makes sense if there's this proliferation of options for viewers at home. You've got your Disney Plus, you've got your Discovery, Warner, whatever it might be that you want to watch. Netflix have got to try and get hold of their viewers and up their takings.
Well, there's three possible suggestions for why they've lost 200,000 subscribers recently. One is lockdowns are over, people haven't got the same amount of time. 2, we're all feeling the cost of living, so we'll let some things go. 3, they've blocked themselves in Russia. So, actually, the 3 Musketeers, 4 Musketeers is one's fun. Number 4, people had been turned off Netflix by the fact that they're funding Prince Harry and Meghan. But that's not my suggestion. They're saying that because Netflix are pouring money in sustaining the Harry and Meghan circus, people are turned off. That wouldn't influence me.
David, let's finish on some snaky business, shall we? Page 27 of The Sun, Add Enough, their headline.
Yes, another knock-on effect of the energy crisis. People who keep exotic pets such as snakes and reptiles, which are kept in these little tanks with heating on, are finding they can't afford to keep the heating, and a typical heating bill has gone up from £70 to £200 a year to keep one of these tanks heated. So they're getting rid of their adders and snakes.
That's fine by me. I'm not a big reptile fan, but are they just releasing them?
You work in journalism.
Yeah, that's true. But
are they putting them down the toilet?
That's what I want to know. What are they doing with them? Are they releasing them into people's gardens? And
what The Sun has found is that there's about 800 of these tanks are advertised on a site, which have rocketed from about tenfold, and there is some fears among the RSPCA that some of these will be thrown out in the wild, which will be unfair on the animals, unfair on those who go for a walk in the woods.
Well, it might not be long before Boris's analogy of a crocodile hanging onto your leg becomes true in Downing Street. You don't know what's at large.
There you go. Look, David Wooding, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. It's been a pleasure. Liz Kershaw, broadcaster as well. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Soon. Now, we're talking about the picture now that went viral. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It was the little Ukrainian girl in her nappy with her name and her family's contact details scrawled on her back in case the worst happened. Now, as a mother, I saw this picture when it was going viral and it really moved me, and I'm absolutely thrilled to say we can now speak to Sashi Maki, the mother, joining us from the safety of France. Good morning to you, Sasha. Look, first of all, what drove you? What made you decide to do this and write your daughter's name and your contact details on her back?
It was during the first day of war. We were preparing to flee from Kiev, and there was a lack of information about what's going on. We just were hearing a lot of sounds of powerful sounds of bombing, and we prepare everything. And I realized that in case of injury, the load-us with this small card with details could be removed. That's why I decided to put that information just right on Vera's skin.
Okay, And of course you were worried that the worst might happen, that your daughter might not know who you are, and you know, you have a very clear way that you want to bring Vera up, of course. That hasn't happened, I'm pleased to say. You've managed to get out of Ukraine. Tell us about your own journey with your family.
Yeah, it wasn't happened with us. Sorry, it's not that question. But now it's happened in Mariupol with thousands of other children who are dying of thirst and hunger. We are absolutely safe now in the south of France, and we go here through Moldova, across the border. It was a queue about 22 hours. We even spent a night at the car with a turning off engine because it could be reached from the sky. They could bomb this queue with the lightning. And then across the border to Romania, and from Romania took a flight to Brussels, from where we were taken by our French family.
So pleased that you have managed to get to safety, and as you're very right to point out that so many children in Ukraine and indeed their parents have not been as lucky, and the situation in Mariupol absolutely horrendous, and you really bring that to life for us. It's interesting, your friends thought you were hysterical, didn't they, over the winter months when Russia started to mass their troops on the border, and you started to prepare your legal documents, medical things, and you did research, and you read that it was scissors that were recommended to be as part of that evacuation package if the worst happens, because clothes might have to be removed in an emergency, and that's what gave you this idea to write on your daughter's back. Of course, your worst fears were realised, and that invasion did happen. Many of your friends weren't as lucky, were they?
Yeah, they were like more, but I think in general a lot of Ukrainians were and now still infantile about all this situation, about the war, and I was really concerned and do everything by this brochure what's come from the government. And my friends, they are almost all of them are on the border of the west part of Ukraine, so they also escaped from Kiev and from other cities to the border or even abroad, but they still believe that it could be ended in a few days and want to come back home as soon as possible. And they even we were escaped on the first day from Kiev, because under our house there is no shelter because it's an island on the sand and on the river Dnipro. But they are just like can't do nothing, just freeze without any thoughts, just was so scared that it looks like I were more prepared than they. But mentally prepared.
Tell us lastly about Vera and how she's coping with all of this. I mean, she's very little, only 2 years old, but she must be aware and pick up on your vibes, on your worries, and of course seen unspeakable things, queues, borders, people fleeing, tears, all the rest of it. I mean, how's she getting on and settling in France?
For now, she's okay because my mom joined us. She was bringing by volunteers from Poland, and now she's walking with her and outside, and she's absolutely okay. I even took her documents to kindergarten. So she's okay, surrounded with the care and love, and we could play with French kids and learning bonjour and au revoir.
Absolutely heartening to hear. I'm so pleased that you and Vera are safe and well, and we share your thoughts this morning for those who are in Mariupol and suffering in these difficult days. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for it.
Secondary school students will be able to study the natural world through a new GCSE in natural history, which will be introduced
by September 2025. Now, that forms part of new plans detailing how the UK education sector is to become a world leader in climate change by 2030. Now, this is all part of the government's flagship sustainability and climate change strategy. And here to tell us about it and how he thinks it will work is the Secretary of State for Education, Nadhim Zahawi, who joins us now from Westminster. Secretary of State, thank you for your time. And there you are on a beautiful, lovely day on that green, and all seems well with the world. As we know, all's not well with the world, and we're talking about geographically and in terms of climate change and whatever. How do you think you're going to make a difference in the classroom?
So what I'm launching today, as you described it, is our sustainability and climate change strategy. Children already, obviously through geography, through STEM, through citizenship lessons, can learn about the environment and protecting the environment. We've gone further with this natural history GCSE because I think we could discover the next David Attenborough, the next great tech entrepreneur who will help preserve and save the planet. That's one part of it. Another part of it is opening up the education estate. So if you look at the education estate in England, it's about 2 cities the size of Birmingham, and we're turning it into a digital national education nature park, so students from all around the country, hopefully other countries as well. I was talking to my Italian counterpart at COP, and they think they might be able to join us on this, where they can see what they're doing in their fields, in their open spaces in schools. Plus, some schools don't have as big open spaces. They can learn about geospatial mapping. And we're launching a Climate Leaders Awards, working with the sort of the Duke of Edinburgh type awards, with a ceremony that students can then use on their CVs for the future. Why is it important, Eamonn? Because actually, instead of having students being anxious about climate change, about saving the planet, and going on disruptive, illegal protests, they should channel that energy towards science and innovation and discovery to help preserve and save the planet. And that's why we're so excited. It was the first time, by the way, at COP26 that I brought together my colleagues, fellow education ministers from around the world. It's never been done before at any COP, and I hope we'll replicate it and grow it at COP27 and 28 as well in Egypt and in the UAE.
What I think's really interesting about this, and you talk about the anxiousness that children have, maybe at last they feel they're being listened to. Maybe at last they feel here is a subject which is not only relevant to them, but is relevant to the world in which they live as well. So a gold star for that, Secretary of State, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I've got young ones, Nadhim Zahawi, and all the evidence I would suggest is that this will be well received. Young people, as you say, anxious about it, and some might argue actually perhaps it's often the older generations who are less open to some of these arguments, and maybe we'd be better spending our energy there.
I completely agree with you in the sense that hopefully we start with the GCSE and go on to doing an environmental science A-level, and as I say, we discover the next David Attenborough on a day when he's been recognised by the UN for his achievements. And of course, I can't end this interview without, as you say, on this bright, beautiful day here in Westminster, without wishing Her Majesty the Queen a very happy birthday as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. And there's so much you've got on your plate at the minute. It's such a busy week for you, not only as a Member of Parliament, but also as a Secretary of State as well. The Education Select Committee yesterday, I thought very important what you had to say. It seemed to be very clear. And you talk about teachers now having a duty to inform parents if their child identifies as transgender. And what about the support for teachers in making those decisions, often which are moral decisions as well? Are you there for the teachers?
Very much so. So I think it's incumbent upon us in the department, because I have the resources, I have the manpower, the people. I'm working with the Equality and Human Rights Commission to be able to make sure that the front line, the teachers who are busy educating and enriching young minds with that sort of that brain juice, have and feel supported. So I'm going to be publishing guidelines of how they make sure that they keep children who are transgender safe and protected, and protecting minorities is really important in education, in a place where they have to feel safe and cared for properly, but also making sure that they do the right thing by engaging with the parents of those children and protecting the rest of the school, the rest of the students as well. And those guidelines will, I hope, inform in detail how teachers have to deal with some of these really difficult issues sometimes. I've got the resources at the department. It's only right that we design those guidelines with the best expertise of the, as I say, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission that I've engaged with, and get those out as soon as possible, because teachers have to be supported. They've done an incredible job through the pandemic. 99.9% of schools are open, and it's thanks to those great teachers and teaching assistants and support staff that we've managed that. But I think on these issues, it's incumbent on the department to take a leadership role.
I have to ask you, speaking of leadership roles, about what has been undeniably a significant week for the Prime Minister, making that apology in Parliament on Monday and having this vote today potentially to go before a parliamentary committee in all of this. Now, we had Nadine Dorries on the channel last night saying that she thought that this was all sour grapes over Brexit. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it is important that the Prime Minister speaks the truth? And I want to ask you, do you believe the Prime Minister can be trusted with the truth?
I do. I think the Prime Minister takes this very seriously. He said that he would submit himself to Parliament when the police have issued the fixed penalty fine, and he did that this week and apologised fully for that, but also explained why he thought that attending for 9 minutes in the Cabinet Room a birthday celebration didn't break the rules, hence why he doesn't believe that he misled Parliament. We have put down an amendment today because I think your viewers will understand this, that due process is important. The world looks to the United Kingdom for those values of fairness and of course due process. The amendment essentially says that the right chronology, the right steps to take, is to wait for the police to complete their inquiry, their investigation, to then have the Cabinet Office report, the Sue Gray report, published fully. Then that's the right chronology for then Parliament to decide whether it refers this to the Standards and Privileges Committee. I have to say, the Labour Party are in danger of being perceived of playing politics with this. Keir Starmer was so enthusiastic in attacking the Prime Minister on this, and playing politics instead of focusing on the global battle against inflation, Putin in the Ukraine, of course dealing with the backlog of the NHS, that he probably misadvertently misled Parliament by accusing the Prime Minister of attacking BBC journalists for their reporting in the Ukraine. And the Speaker is looking at that because one of my colleagues, David Evnett, has asked him to look at that. And I hope Starmer will come and set the record straight on this. But we shouldn't be playing politics with this. The right thing to do is to allow the police to complete their investigation, to have the Sue Gray report published, and then Parliament can decide if it refers this to the Privileges Committee, and that's what I'll be voting for today.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed. It will take you inside out of that beautiful sunshine. Enjoy it whilst you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
OK, with that, we will take a quick break, and after that, we're talking about Her Majesty's 96th birthday. See you in a sec.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good morning. Good to see you, Eamonn and Isabel, here on a Thursday morning. Thanks for your company throughout this morning. We're on air with you until 9:26 to be actually precise with this. So, MPs, as we were talking with the Secretary of State for Education there, will decide today whether a Commons committee should investigate whether the Prime Minister deliberately misled MPs over lockdown parties.
Yes, and the leader of the True and Fair Party, Gina Miller, joins us in the studio now. Now, I'm sure you will say this parliamentary committee should go ahead and do this investigation, but I wonder whether you accept the government's argument that perhaps now is not the moment for that, given that we haven't completed the police inquiry, the Sue Gray inquiry hasn't been published in full. Is there a legitimate argument, actually, it'd be better just to shelve it for a bit?
I think there's a middle ground. I actually think that the parliamentary committee should start their investigation, but hear all the evidence. So I think it is right that they wait until they see all the evidence, if there are more fines, and the Sue Gray report, because you're really asking them to make a judgment half-cocked if they only have half the evidence. So I do think, but there's nothing stopping them starting it, because it is going to take a while to get through all the evidence that they'll take.
Why do we need another one? What's wrong with the Sue Gray inquiry once we see it in full?
Do you know, this is one thing that puzzled me, because the Sue Gray report and all these investigations take an awful lot of our time and money and effort and takes away from other things. So I did wonder why, but then if you look at our constitution and the way government works, it actually does have to go to the committee. And that's where I think a lot of this that's going on is a symptom of a much bigger problem, which is our constitution, the way Parliament works, isn't good value for money, and it doesn't have the right rules and checks and balances in place. So all of this is a symptom to me of a much bigger problem, which is good, you know, the old-fashioned my word is my bond and the sort of good chap type of government is over. We need more regulation in place so that if this had happened with rules in place, with the Nolan principles in law, they wouldn't need all these expensive investigations.
Isn't the real truth, the real problem, is that you're a bad loser? And this is all about Brexit, and this is all about getting even with Boris, and it's personal.
Well, it's definitely not about Brexit, because that's yesterday's battle. That's over, and you won. All the people who voted Brexit won, and we are a Brexit country. I said that the day after the referendum, and I've always believed that we need to move on. So it's definitely not about that. We've got to make the most of where we are in the world. Secondly, when it comes to Boris, I do think that nobody in power, actually anybody in society, should be allowed to put themselves above the law. And him lying to the Queen and trying to put himself above the law, in my second court case, I don't take personal. I take it on personally on behalf of the country. I'm not the sort of person who takes things personally. I have got more to do.
Yeah, you've got more to do. Arguably, the Prime Minister has got more to do. And we hear all day long from our viewers, from people we meet, that they feel this is trivial, that having a birthday cake ambushed, you know, surprising, caught him in the corridor, whatever it might be, is not important when you've got a cost of living crisis, when you've got a war in Ukraine. The list of to-dos for the Prime Minister, even greater, I'd argue, perhaps, than yours.
No, I think actually the Constitution being in a place which keeps our leaders in check is very important to our country because it affects everything that they then do, the policies they bring in. All the issues you talked about are very, very important, but two wrongs don't make a right, and this is a problem, that we are actually spending too much time. I do agree with that. And actually, the latest poll this morning in The Times actually doesn't show that. It shows that the majority of the public doesn't feel that. They do feel that this is an issue that needs to be resolved. And I've been going around the country for 6 weeks now since we launched the party to 19 locations, 19 visits, and people are angry. They want it put to bed, and I think that's right. It needs to be resolved, and then we can move on.
Of course, polls don't always indicate the way things are going to go.
No, that's why me going and talking to people is really important.
Yeah, opinions on the doorstep, very, very good barometer. Important. We've got this by-election coming up in Wakefield. We've got the local elections in May. Who knows when the next general election may be? Do you think that Boris Johnson will be damaged by this?
I think he is damaged. That's what it's saying on the doorstep. But again, I go back to the fact that it's actually not about Boris. It's the fact that we have a system that allows somebody to put themselves above the law. And that's because the system is weak. Our system of government, we as a country deserve to have checks and balances in place so that if somebody bullies, if somebody lies, if somebody puts their hands in their pocket and puts a friend on a payroll, those things don't happen in any other walk of life, so why should it be allowed in politics?
And of course, it's not the first time we've had this sort of scenario. Tony Blair also in hot water when
absolutely.
We had the weapons of
Funnily enough, I started my campaign after the global financial crisis, and before that, I was out on the streets in '97 for the first time. So I don't think it's not about the colour of the government. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the fact that any government should be held to account.
I just want to bring in, Gina, just listening to Norman Baker here, former minister, former MP. You're not an MP anymore, are you still an MP?
No, 2015 that ended.
That ended. Listening to Gina, and she's talking there, this is not about Boris, it's about the system, and Gina's very strong on reforming that system. Has she got a point?
She absolutely has. The system isn't right. We have an unwritten constitution. There's not what the paper is not written on. That's the problem we've got. And we've got... we rely on convention, we rely on people doing the right thing. And most people do the right thing, but some people don't. And if people decide not to do the right thing, there's very few ways of controlling them. We saw the Prime Minister, for example, attempting to prorogue Parliament in order to avoid a difficult vote over Brexit. Well, you have to be taken to the Supreme Court for that to be rectified. We shouldn't have to do that in this country. So we ought to have a more structured arrangement which holds people to account. And part of that, by the way, is freedom of information, which the government's been busy trying to undermine. We have to find out what's being done in our names.
This vote probably won't be successful today, will it? Just based on parliamentary numbers. The Prime Minister probably isn't going to resign. Do you worry about the precedent that this has set? And do you think that the ministerial code now is effectively ineffective?
Well, the ministerial code, of course, allowed Priti Patel to carry on in office after she'd been found guilty of bullying, and the person who was independent looking at the matter is the one who had to resign rather than the Home Secretary. The ministerial code is controlled by the Prime Minister, so unless he's going to find himself guilty, he's going to stay in office. So that doesn't work either in the present circumstances. We do need to have, this is not about a piece of cake, as some Conservative MPs want to pretend it is. Apart from anything else, there might be more fines coming down the track. This is about whether or not the Prime Minister today has been honest to Parliament. That's my view. I mean, the Genius point about the wider constitutional points are absolutely right, but in the immediacy of this is about whether the Prime Minister has been honest and told Parliament the truth. For me, as a former MP, that's the issue.
The truth's an interesting word, Gina. Often, there was what was Jack Nicholson in that Few Good Men film, you can't handle the truth.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot to that. And I'm interested in, the name of your party, the True and Fair Party. I would like to think if I was young and impressionable, I could believe in that. That would give me something to look forward to, and you could believe you make a difference and that everybody is true and fair. What does your party stand for?
Fairness first, definitely. We start with fixing the machinery of government, and the ripple effect of that will be we attract a better culture in our government and politicians, better people with better principles, and then the policy making will be better as well. So it all starts with fixing the machinery of government.
Right. The machinery of the monarchy, Norman, I'm not sure we have to fix that. It's a beautiful day today, and it's the day in which the Queen turns 96 years of age. Tell us about your experiences of the...
I mean, I always pay attention to the Queen's birthday because it's the same birthday as my mum, as a matter of fact.
Oh.
So,
and incidentally this week...
Oh, yes, it was my birthday 2 days ago.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not every day you turn 40, is it?
Oh, well.
So she's given 70 years of service on the throne. That's an amazing achievement for any individual. And she, by and large, hasn't put her foot wrong. Unlike, I'm afraid, some of her children who have put her foot wrong many occasions. And I think the nation loves a good granny, don't they? And she's a good granny.
Do you think it would be a sad day for her, given that she's gone to this place that was so significant to her now late husband? There's lots of memories for her at Sandringham.
Well, I think when you get to 96, you've probably got lots of memories. In fact, you've probably got more thinking about the past than you have about the future, by definition, because that's how old you are at that particular point. You know, I think the issue is really that the Queen has clearly not been very well recently. She's been doing what's called very light duties. I mean, as I understand it, they are very light indeed. And I think the palace is clearly preparing for the future in some detail.
Don't say it.
we have effectively a regency going on at the present time. I mean, Prince Charles and Prince William really are carrying out the Queen's duties to a large extent. I understand that Charles is getting the box, the red box, the ministerial box, if you like, which I used to get, and he's dealing with the nuts and bolts of that.
Yes.
And the Queen is largely divorcing that now. Well, I mean, I'm not blaming her at all. She's 96. She's given a good innings. But
the question, as her grandson asked, is she surrounded by the right people?
Well, it's an extraordinary question, to be honest with you. I mean, Harry saying she needs to be protected from whom? I don't understand what he means by that. I mean, does he think there's some sort of cabal in the palace is about to, has got the Queen's interest not at heart?
Or he's pushing his sort of right people. Here's a guy I know from California who could be very good advising you on.
I don't think the Queen would be very interested in people from California helping her, to be honest with you. I mean, what does he mean by protected? What do you mean by the right sort of people? This is an extraordinary thing to say. If he's going to say that, you need to be clear what you're talking about.
Yeah, look, some of the papers will have it that, this interview's overshadowed Her Majesty's birthday, although we suspect that there's still a very warm relationship there. That being said, he did sort of hint, didn't he, about tensions between him and his father. Relationship there perhaps a little bit trickier.
Well, I think they are trickier, those relations, and clearly there's been a sea change because he's gone to live in America, says he's happy there. He's clearly much happier with Meghan than he is with the what he regards as a fussy, dusty royal family here in the UK. What I find a little bit distasteful, to be honest with you, is playing out private conversations in public. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, any family doesn't want to have its conversations relayed in the front page of the national press. And I'm all in favour of holding the monarchy to account. You'll know from my book that there's a great deal of questions to ask about the finances and so on. But, I draw the line at personal relations between individual members. That's nobody's business.
Absolutely.
Interesting. OK. Guys, thank you very much indeed. Happy birthday, Your Majesty. And thank you very much, Norman, for that.
That's a Queen, Gina, not you.
Well, it is. It is. Happy birthday to you as well, Gina.
Do you have an unofficial birthday as well?
Oh, of course. Love it. My children have one for me.
Thank you very much indeed, Gina Miller and Norman Baker. Coming up, we're going to be discussing the latest showbiz stories. That's with Ellie Phillips, including all the real-life drama from Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's court case in the States. That's after this short break. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Do you know what? At the end of this programme today, very long programme today, I think we should have some well, I was going to say nice stories, but they're not nice showbiz stories as well.
No, they're not, actually.
But they're from the nice entertainment reporter Ellie Phillips as well. And the first one is Johnny Depp, now in court. He's having his day in court against his ex-wife Amber Heard. What's he been saying in his testimony?
OK, so obviously we're getting this delayed from America in the fact that yesterday, Wednesday, for us kind of started late on in the day, so it was streamed live. Obviously we can watch this. He's in court. It was day 2 of his testimony. Day 1 was kind of his background and his, upbringing. Day 2 was very much about Amber Heard. It went into detail about their famous 2015 March fight, which took place in Australia. And during that fight, he claims that Amber severed his finger with a vodka bottle, that she threw this vodka bottle at him, and that the fight stemmed from her wanting a post-nuptial agreement because she wasn't in his will. And he kind of seemed baffled by it, like, well, nothing's going to happen to me, whatever. She was raging about it, according to him. He says that he locked himself in rooms to keep himself away from her being violent towards him, and at the end it pushed him to drinking vodka, which is where the vodka bottle came in. So he broke his sobriety, started drinking vodka. He claims she threw the vodka bottle at him, got a cigarette and put a cigarette out on his face, that he then had a nervous breakdown and used his finger, which was a bloody finger, to write on the wall messages of abuse that she'd shouted at him. All sounds really hectic. Then he says she left briefly, called in security, came back in and was screaming, stop hitting me, get away from me. Very Gone Girl style, where it's kind of this faked, according to him, experience that she's saying. And he said, I was 20 feet away from her. I was really confused. Why is she shouting, you can't hit me again? So that all happened. And
can I ask you, Ellie, in all likelihood, this was probably a mutually abusive relationship, and sometimes people can't comprehend that a man could be a victim of domestic abuse in this. Whatever it is, we don't know. He testifies, she testifies. It sounds like a real mess. I mean, how would you describe the two of them living together, or the dynamic between the two of them?
Completely toxic. I mean, from either way you look at it, from both testimonies, which she's yet to come, but from what he's put out there, it was, she used very aggressive language towards him, bullying, putting him down, belittling him. We actually heard audio recording played yesterday that he'd taken during their relationship, where she admitted to hitting him. She basically said, I didn't punch you, I hit you, I slapped you, it wasn't a punch. So I'm like, that's abuse, that's physical violence. So how can she say that, with her claims, I think that massively undermines what she's put. But you're right, it can be both ways. It's not necessarily a man and a woman. In fact, their marriage counsellor testified a few days ago, and she said they were mutually abusive.
Right. Look, Ellie, can I ask you, because, a lot of people see this as a sort of form of entertainment. They're watching it because the camera's alive in the courtrooms there instead of Netflix of an evening. Does it cheapen all of this, having cameras in court, do you think? And I ask you that as a survivor of domestic abuse. Or do you think this is really, really important and actually highlighting the toxicity of violent relationships?
Yeah, I think it is really important. And I think it's not only important to show kind of the ins and outs, the depths, the complexities, that it's not just physical violence, there's actually the emotional
coercive
abuse,
control. Yeah.
And Johnny actually said in his testimony, it's actually the emotional and mental abuse that's taken its toll more than physical abuse. And I think that, with me, that resonates the same. You know, I had physical violence against me and, you know, abusive control and those things. And it is the emotional side that takes its toll longer, because you get over the physical, the bruises heal, the scars fade, but the emotional stuff takes its toll. And it's interesting to see it on this platform, and it's also important because I think it shows that it can happen to anyone. These are two very successful people with more money than we could ever imagine. They should have no problems in the world, and yet they can go through.
And can I just say, we commend you for talking about that, because that is incredibly brave and inspirational for other women who may be suffering those sorts of things, and indeed perhaps men. But, you know, thank you for being so honest.
And I agree with you about the cameras in court business, that it opens this up, but it's not some awful secret that you don't talk about this happening to your auntie or your cousin or whatever. There it is, it's being talked about, it happens, it goes on. Identify with it, deal with it.
Yeah, call it out.
You call it out.
Know it, acknowledge it, call it out.
Do you know, we're talking about, you know, again, I said, let's look at light stories. They're not. All of these are very heavy today. But, you know, poignant and awful. That young lad, Tom Parker, in his 30s, star of The Wanted, and he died at nearly a month ago now. He's 33 years of age. Brain cancer. The funeral was yesterday.
The funeral was yesterday. It took place in London. His widow, Kelsey, led the procession, and she told mourners it was a pre-recorded message that was played out because she'd invited fans to come along, and they lined the streets. So this footage played out of her talking about him, and she said, if love alone could have saved you, you would have lived forever, which was just, you know. And he leaves behind 2 young children. He's got Aurelia and Bodhi, and I think it's so devastating. You can see his bandmates there. They actually were pallbearers for the procession. They carried his coffin in to the church. And I think, you know, it's so tragic, it's so sad, but I think you've got to look at the strength that this guy had. When he was diagnosed with this, it's called a glioblastoma. It was stage 4 terminal brain cancer. He was told he had 6 months to live, and he battled on for a year extra.
Yeah, incredible.
Absolutely.
We are coming to the end of the programme, unfortunately, and our thoughts are with Tom Parker's wife and those children, and we just
bandmates as well.
Yeah,
all the family.
Ellie, listen, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. But even more, dear listeners and viewers, always lovely to have you on board, and thanks for being there sometime during the last 3.5 hours. That's it from us. We'll be back Monday at 6 a.m.
Tom Harwood will be up next with the briefing. See you soon.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Hello, good morning. I'm Luke Mile with your weather forecasts, and this Thursday morning is going to be a bit of a chilly one out there first thing. Temperatures have fallen away overnight, but through the day we'll see plenty of warm sunshine away from those eastern coasts. Now, we will start to see an easterly wind feeding in over the next few days, with the high pressure to the north and lower pressure down towards the southwest. It does mean that things will turn a bit cooler along those eastern coasts, and already we're starting to see that through this morning with this low cloud here drifting onto the coasts of northeast England and southeast Scotland. But by and large, most places will see a fine and fair day, lots of sunshine around across the UK. A little bit more cloud developing though for England and Wales through the afternoon, turning that sunshine a little bit hazier through the afternoon. But where we do see the sunshine, those temperatures getting up to 18 degrees, that's 64 in Fahrenheit. Now, through Thursday afternoon and evening, we'll see plenty of sunshine to end the day. A lot of this cloud will melt away, so for many, a fair end to the day. But overnight, we start to see that easterly wind turning a bit stronger, drifting in this low cloud and mist and haar, so it will turn a bit grey and a bit murky, I think, for some places, particularly in the east as we go to the small hours of Friday. Some clear skies, though, but with more wind and a bit more cloud in general, temperatures won't be as low as what they were on Thursday morning. And that cloud could be thick enough at times through Friday morning to give a few spits and spots of rain across southern areas. Nothing particularly heavy, but at times there will be a little bit more cloud and rain here. But the best of sunshine will be further north, particularly northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northwest England. We'll see some fair weather here through the day. Temperatures still not doing too bad where we've got the sunshine, but with the cloud and with the cooler wind, it will feel quite chilly along those North Sea coasts and under any of this thicker cloud. And that's the trend really as we go through the next few days. Those temperatures sliding down somewhat, and there will be a few showers at times, particularly for more southern areas. Of course, I'll be back later with an update for you. Take care.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight.